I'll destroy her, Ethan. I'll make sure that pathetic little waitress loses everything. Her job, her father's treatment, her dignity, unless you crawl back to me right now. Victoria's manicured nails dug into the mahogany table as rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. The billionaire across from her didn't flinch. Instead, his cold gray eyes shifted to the trembling young woman in a server's apron standing frozen near the kitchen doors, the woman who had just done the impossible. She'd spoken his mother's secret language. What happened next would shatter everything Victoria thought money could control. But before we get there, let me take you back to where this all started, to the moment an invisible waitress became the only woman a broken billionaire could see. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. The crystal chandeliers of Luminaire cast dancing shadows across white tablecloths as Claire Bennett balanced another tray of champagne flutes, her arms aching from the weight. Outside, rain slashed against the windows like accusations. Inside, the city's wealthiest pretended not to notice the storm. Or her. "Excuse me." She kept her voice soft, apologetic. Always apologetic. "Your Chateau Neuf du Pape, sir." The hedge fund manager didn't look up from his phone. His date, draped in diamonds that probably cost more than Claire's annual rent, wrinkled her nose as if the server had brought week-old fish instead of a $300 bottle of wine. Claire set down the bottle with practiced care and retreated. Invisible again. That was fine. Being invisible meant being safe. She'd been working at Luminaire for 8 months now, ever since the medical bills started piling up faster than she could count. Before that, she'd been someone different. Someone who studied Renaissance restoration techniques in Florence, who could identify a Caravaggio brushstroke from across a gallery, who had dreams bigger than surviving another shift. That version of Claire died the night her father collapsed. "Table 12 needs water," Marcus hissed as he rushed past, his own tray loaded with oysters on ice. "And for God's sake, smile more. Gregory's watching." Gregory Chen, Luminaire's owner, stood near the entrance in his impeccable suit, greeting guests with the kind of warmth only money could buy. He paid well. Well enough to keep Claire's father in the cardiac unit at Mount Sinai, instead of being transferred to whatever nightmare public facility his insurance would allow. Well enough that Claire swallowed her exhaustion, fixed her face into something pleasant, and kept moving. The restaurant hummed with the particular energy of extreme wealth. Conversations about summer homes in the Hamptons, about art acquisitions and yacht maintenance, about problems that weren't really problems at all. Claire had learned not to listen too carefully. It hurt less that way. She was refilling water glasses at table 7 when the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The entrance doors opened. Gregory's professional smile transformed into something genuine, almost reverent. A ripple of awareness moved through the dining room as conversation stuttered and heads turned. Claire didn't need to look to know someone important had arrived. She could feel it in the sudden tension of the waitstaff, in the way Gregory practically sprinted to the door, in how even the most jaded socialites sat up a little straighter. "Mr. Calloway." Gregory's voice carried across the room. "What an honor. Your usual table, of course." Against her better judgment, Claire glanced toward the entrance. The man who stepped through looked like he'd been carved from granite in expensive suits. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was just slightly too long to be corporate, and eyes the color of a winter storm. He moved like someone who'd forgotten how to relax, every muscle held tight beneath his tailored jacket. Ethan Calloway. Even Claire, who avoided gossip and society pages, knew that name. The shipping magnate who'd inherited an empire at 25 and tripled it by 30. The single father whose wife had died, or left, the stories varied, leaving him with a young daughter and a reputation for being utterly unreachable. He looked every bit as cold as the tabloids claimed. Behind him came an older woman who had to be his mother, same sharp cheekbones, same bearing that suggested she'd never doubted her place in the world. Eleanor Calloway wore pearls and judgment in equal measure, her designer handbag probably worth more than Claire's car had been before it died. And clinging to Ethan's arm like a parasite in Prada was Victoria Hale. Claire recognized her immediately. Victoria was a fixture at Luminaire, the kind of woman who sent back dishes for being too rustic and left degrading Yelp reviews if the server didn't laugh at her unfunny jokes. Old money desperate to marry new money, her father's telecommunications fortune apparently not quite enough to satisfy her. "Darling, I specifically requested the corner table." Victoria's voice carried that particular whine of someone who'd never been told no. This one is too close to the kitchen. People will think we're... It's fine. Ethan's voice was flat, dismissive. He pulled out a chair for his mother with mechanical courtesy, then sat down himself without waiting for Victoria. Claire watched this play out while pretending to arrange silverware at a nearby table. The dynamic was instantly clear. Eleanor disapproved of Victoria. Victoria resented Eleanor. And Ethan seemed to wish he were anywhere else. It reminded Claire of those nature documentaries where predators circled each other, all teeth, and barely contained violence. I need to check on table 4, she muttered to herself, using any excuse to move away from whatever was about to unfold. But Marcus caught her arm as she passed. You're taking 12. Sarah called in sick. He jerked his chin toward the Callaway table. Try not to screw it up. Gregory says they're VIP level important. Claire's stomach dropped. Marcus, I can't. You can, and you will. I've got the senator's table and the Russian guy who tips in hundreds. You're the only one free. He was already walking away. Just smile, nod, and don't spill anything on the billionaire. She stood there for a moment, tray pressed against her chest like a shield, watching table 12 from across the room. Ethan had his phone out, scrolling through something with the focus of a man trying to ignore his dinner companions. Eleanor studied the menu with surgical precision. Victoria was reapplying lipstick with one hand while typing furiously with the other. This was going to be a disaster. Claire took a breath, smoothed her apron, and approached. Good evening. My name is Claire, and I'll be... Finally, Victoria didn't look up. We've been sitting here for ages. I'll have the Veuve Clicquot, and make sure it's actually cold this time. Last week, someone brought me champagne that was practically room temperature. That wasn't here, Eleanor said coolly. That was at Daniel. You complained about it for 3 days. Well, the service was terrible there too. Victoria snapped her compact shut. Honestly, Ethan, I don't know why you insist on these places. We should be dining at the club. Ethan finally looked up from his phone, and for just a second, his eyes met Claire's. She expected the usual, that look of vague non-recognition, the way wealthy people often looked at servers, like furniture that occasionally brought food. But something flickered in his expression instead. Exhaustion, maybe. Or recognition of another tired person in a room full of people who'd never been tired a day in their lives. What would you recommend? His voice was quieter than she'd expected, with a slight rasp that suggested too many late nights and not enough sleep. Claire blinked. No one ever asked her opinion. The halibut is excellent tonight. The chef does it with a brown butter sauce and capers. Or if you prefer red meat, the ribeye is... He'll have the steak, medium rare, Victoria interrupted. And I'll do the salmon, but tell the kitchen no sauce. Actually, no seasoning either. Just plain fish. And vegetables steamed, not sautéed, and absolutely no butter. So you want to eat cardboard, Eleanor murmured. How revolutionary. Victoria's eyes flashed. Some of us care about maintaining our figure, Eleanor. Not everyone can hide behind distinguished as an excuse for letting themselves go. The temperature dropped another few degrees. Claire stood very still, her pen hovering over her notepad. This was the part where she was supposed to remain neutral, professional, invisible, where she took orders and disappeared before the real knives came out. Eleanor set down her menu with the deliberate care of someone loading a weapon. When she spoke, it was in rapid, fluid Italian, not the tourist phrase book kind, but a specific Tuscan dialect that Claire had learned during her years in Florence. This plastic little gold digger thinks I don't see exactly what she is. My son deserves better than some fortune-hunting Troya who spreads her legs for anything with a bank account. Claire's pen stopped moving. She shouldn't respond. She absolutely should not respond. Her job was to be invisible, to let the wealthy fight their battles while she collected her paycheck and went home to her dying father. But the words were out before she could stop them. Perhaps if you told him directly, instead of hiding behind language, Signora, he might actually listen. The silence that fell over table 12 was absolute. Victoria's mouth dropped open. Eleanor's eyes widened, genuine shock cracking through her composed facade. And Ethan was staring at Claire like he was seeing her for the first time, really seeing her, his phone forgotten in his hand. Did you just... Victoria found her voice first, shrill with outrage. Did she just speak Italian? Tuscan dialect, Eleanor corrected, still staring at Claire. Specifically the Montevarchi variant. Where did you learn that? Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd just made a catastrophic mistake. Gregory would fire her. She'd lose the only income keeping her father alive, all because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. I studied in Italy, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. For 3 years. Art restoration. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Art restoration. Ethan set his phone down completely now, giving her his full attention. Where? Florence. The Opificio delle Pietrature. The words felt strange in her mouth, like artifacts from someone else's life. But that was before you became a waitress. There was no judgment in his voice, just curiosity. That's quite a change. Yes, well, life happens. Claire gripped her pen so hard she thought it might snap. I should take your orders. I'm sorry for the interruption. No. Eleanor was still watching her with those sharp eyes. Don't apologize. I spoke rudely, and you had the courtesy to respond in kind rather than let me think I'd gotten away with it. She paused. Though I notice you didn't contradict my assessment. Victoria slammed her hand on the table hard enough to rattle the silverware. This is completely inappropriate. Ethan, are you going to let the help insult me? I want her fired, right now. Get the manager. She didn't insult you. Ethan's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. My mother did, in a language she assumed no one would understand. I don't care about technicalities. Victoria's face was flushing red beneath her makeup. She was eavesdropping, and she was rude, and I want her gone. Then leave. Ethan didn't even look at his girlfriend. If the service bothers you so much, go to the club. I'm sure they'll serve you unseasoned salmon while you complain about the temperature. Victoria gaped at him. Excuse me? You heard me. He turned back to Claire, and something in his expression had shifted. The exhaustion was still there, but beneath it was something else. Interest, maybe, or recognition. The halibut. You said it was excellent? Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. Then I'll have that. He closed his menu. And whatever wine you think pairs best. Not what's most expensive, what's actually good. Ethan! Victoria was standing now, her voice climbing toward hysterical. I am not going to sit here and be humiliated by you and your mother and some nobody waitress who thinks speaking Italian makes her special. Then don't sit. Eleanor picked up her menu again. The view will improve considerably. That was apparently the final straw. Victoria grabbed her purse, some designer thing with more buckles than purpose, and turned to storm out, but not before leaning close to Claire, close enough that her perfume made Claire's eyes water. You just made a very big mistake, she hissed. I will destroy you for this. Then she was gone, heels clicking furiously against the marble floor, leaving a wake of turned heads and whispered speculation. Claire stood frozen, still clutching her notepad, very aware that half the restaurant was now watching their table. Gregory was moving toward them with his professional crisis smile firmly in place. Mr. Calloway, I am so sorry for any... How much? Ethan interrupted. Gregory blinked. I'm sorry. The restaurant. How much to buy it? The entire dining room seemed to hold its breath. That is, Mr. Calloway, Luminaire isn't for sale. This establishment has been... Everything's for sale. Ethan pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I just sent you an offer. You have 60 seconds to accept before I lower it. Claire watched Gregory's face go through several interesting color changes as he checked his phone. The number must have been substantial because his professional composure cracked completely. That's very generous, Mr. Calloway, but I don't understand why... 40 seconds. Ethan, Eleanor's voice held a warning. What are you doing? Something I should have done a long time ago. He looked up at Claire again. You're fired. Her heart stopped. And immediately rehired as my personal art consultant. Salary commensurate with your education and experience, full benefits, and your father's medical bills transferred to my family's care network. He said it like he was ordering coffee. Starting tonight. Claire couldn't breathe. What? 20 seconds, Mr. Chen. Gregory was sweating now, his phone clutched in his shaking hand. This is highly irregular. 10 seconds. I accept. Gregory practically shouted it. The offer is accepted. Excellent. Ethan stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. Ms. Bennett, would you join us? I find I'm suddenly very interested in discussing Renaissance restoration techniques over dinner. She's a waitress, Ethan. Eleanor sounded more amused than shocked now. You can't just... I can, and I did. He pulled out Victoria's abandoned chair, offering it to Claire with a slight gesture. Unless you'd prefer to keep serving halibut to people who don't appreciate it? Claire's mind was reeling. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Billionaires didn't buy restaurants on a whim. They didn't offer jobs to struggling waitresses who accidentally spoke Italian at the wrong moment. But Ethan Calloway was standing there, waiting, with something in his eyes that looked almost like hope. And Claire was so tired of being invisible. I need to call the hospital, she heard herself say. My father's nurse expects me to check in during my break. Use my phone. Ethan handed it to her without hesitation. This device that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. Take your time. Her hands were shaking as she took it. Around them, the restaurant had erupted into barely concealed chaos. Waitstaff whispering frantically, Gregory looking like he might faint, other diners craning to see what had caused such a scene. Claire sat down in Victoria's chair, still wearing her apron, still smelling like the kitchen, and looked across the table at a billionaire who'd just turned her entire world upside down. I don't understand, she whispered. Neither do I. Ethan's smile was small, tired, but genuine. But I haven't been interested in anything in a very long time. So let's start with dinner and see where it goes. Eleanor was watching them both with an expression Claire couldn't quite read. You realize Victoria will make this her personal mission to destroy? The girl's vindictive, Ethan. This won't end well. Probably not. He didn't seem concerned. But I'm tired of well-behaved disasters. Let's try something different. The waiter who brought their food, Marcus, looking absolutely stunned, set down plates with trembling hands. The halibut did look excellent, perfectly golden, the brown butter sauce catching the light. Claire picked up her fork, still not quite believing this was real. In Florence, Ethan said, cutting into his fish, what was your focus? Which period? And just like that, they were talking. Not Billionaire and Waitress, not Broken and Desperate, just two people discussing something that mattered. Claire found herself describing the Medici chapels, the way light moved through San Lorenzo, the impossible challenge of preserving frescoes that were already dust held together by hope and chemistry. Ethan listened, actually listened, asked questions that showed he understood the difference between restoration and repair, between preserving history and erasing it. Most people want everything to look new, Claire said, surprising herself with how easily the words came. They don't understand that the cracks and fading are part of the story, that covering them up doesn't fix anything. It just makes it harder to see what's really there. Like people. Ethan's voice was quiet. Like people, Claire agreed. Eleanor had been silent through most of the meal, but now she set down her wine glass with a soft clink. You left Florence for your father? Claire nodded, the familiar weight settling over her chest. He had a heart attack. Massive damage. He needed surgery, then care, then more surgery. My mother died when I was 16. He's all I have. And you gave up everything to save him. Wouldn't you? Claire met Eleanor's eyes. If it was your child? Something shifted in the older woman's expression. Yes, she said simply. I would. They finished eating as the storm outside intensified, rain drumming against the windows like applause. Other diners had gone back to their meals, the initial scandal fading into gossip fodder. By tomorrow, the story would be everywhere. The billionaire who bought a restaurant to keep talking to a waitress. Claire should have been mortified. Instead, she felt oddly light, like she'd been holding her breath for 8 months, and only now remembered how to exhale. I should go, she said finally, reluctantly. The hospital? I'll drive you. Ethan was already signaling for his driver. It's late, and the storm. I can take the subway. I know you can, but you don't have to. He stood, offered his hand. Let me do this. Claire looked at that outstretched hand, well-manicured, free of calluses or scars, a hand that had never struggled for anything, and almost said no. Pride was a hard thing to swallow, especially when you'd been choking on it for months. But the subway would take an hour in this weather, and her father's nurse got worried if Claire was late, and she was so tired of doing everything the hard way. She took his hand. The car was waiting outside, a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than Claire would earn in 5 years. The driver jumped out with an umbrella, but Ethan waved him off, taking it himself and holding it over Claire as they ran through the rain. Inside, the car smelled like leather and money. Eleanor had left separately, some charity event she couldn't miss, leaving Claire alone with Ethan in the back seat as they glided through Manhattan's rain-soaked streets. Mount Sinai, right? Ethan's driver already had the address. Claire nodded, too overwhelmed to ask how he knew. They drove in silence for a while, the city lights smearing past the tinted windows. Claire kept expecting to wake up, for this to be some elaborate stress dream brought on by too many double shifts and not enough sleep. "Why did you do that?" she finally asked. "Buy the restaurant. Offer me a job. You don't know me." Ethan was quiet for a moment, watching the rain. "My daughter," he said eventually. "Emma. She's 6. Every night I read to her, and every night she asks me questions I don't know how to answer. Why is the sky blue? Where do dreams come from? Why can't everyone be happy?" He smiled, but it was sad. "And I realize I've forgotten how to be curious about anything. I built an empire asking the right questions, and somewhere along the way, I stopped caring about the answers." He looked at her then, really looked at her. "But tonight, when you spoke that dialect, when you told my mother the truth she needed to hear, I was curious again. I wanted to know who you were, what you'd given up, why you were hiding behind an apron when you clearly belonged somewhere else." "Maybe I belong exactly where I was," Claire said softly. "Maybe Florence was the dream, and this is just reality. Or maybe they're both real, and you haven't figured out how to hold them both yet." The car pulled up to the hospital entrance. Through the glass doors, Claire could see the familiar lobby, the tired security guard, the fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly dead. "Thank you," she said, "for the ride, for dinner, for whatever tonight was." "Claire." Ethan's hand caught hers as she reached for the door. "The job offer was real. I have a painting that needs restoration, a family piece, very old, very damaged. I've had 3 experts tell me it's beyond saving. I'd like a 4th opinion. I haven't worked in restoration in almost a year, so you'll be rusty. Come anyway." He pulled out a card, pressed it into her palm. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., my office. Just look at it. If you think it's hopeless, you can walk away, and I'll make sure your father's care is covered regardless." Claire stared at the card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, an address in Midtown that probably occupied an entire floor. "Why would you do that? Cover his care even if I can't help you?" "Because I can," Ethan said simply. "And because you would do the same if you could. I saw it in how you talked about him." He was right, and they both knew it. Claire got out of the car, the rain immediately soaking through her thin jacket. But she held onto the card, protecting it with her body as she ran toward the entrance. Inside, she took the elevator to the 4th floor, walked the familiar path to room 427, and found her father sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. The machines beeped their steady rhythm, measuring the heart that had given out trying to give her a better life. "Hey, Dad," she whispered, settling into the bedside chair. "You're not going to believe the night I had." She told him everything, the Italian, the confrontation, the impossible offer. Her father didn't wake, but she liked to think he could hear her anyway, that somewhere in his medicated sleep he was proud of her for finally speaking up. Claire pulled out Ethan's card again, studying it in the dim light. She should say no. Should keep her head down, find another restaurant job, stick to the plan that had kept her and her father afloat this long. Getting involved with someone like Ethan Calloway was asking for trouble, for complications she couldn't afford. But when she closed her eyes, she saw that painting she'd mentioned in Florence, the Caravaggio in the Uffizi, where the light hit the canvas just right and you could see every layer of paint, every decision the artist had made, every correction and change of heart. Beautiful, not despite its history, but because of it. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe she didn't have to choose between who she'd been and who she'd become. Maybe she could be both. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. "This is Eleanor Calloway. My son gave me your contact. I want you to know that Victoria Hale is not someone who forgives easily. She will come after you with everything she has, and she has quite a lot. If you're smart, you'll stay away from my family." Claire's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She should be scared. Eleanor wasn't warning her. She was threatening her, in the polite way that wealthy people specialized in. But Claire had given up her dreams, her future, everything she'd worked for to keep her father alive. She'd scrubbed floors and swallowed insults and made herself invisible just to survive another day. She was tired of being scared. "Thank you for the warning, Mrs. Calloway. I'll see you at 2 p.m. tomorrow." She sent it before she could second-guess herself, then turned off her phone and settled deeper into the uncomfortable hospital chair. Outside, the storm was finally breaking. Through the window, she could see the first hints of clear sky, stars struggling to be visible through Manhattan's eternal glow. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she'd walk into Ethan Calloway's world and either find her way back to the person she'd been or discover she'd been fooling herself all along. But tonight, watching her father breathe, holding a business card that felt like a second chance, Claire let herself hope. It was dangerous, she knew. Hope had a way of making the fall hurt worse, but she'd been falling for so long already. Maybe it was time to try flying instead. The night shift nurse came by, a kind woman named Patricia, who always snuck Claire coffee from the break room. "Long day?" "The longest," Claire said, "and tomorrow's going to be worse." "Better," Patricia corrected with a knowing smile. "Tomorrow's going to be better. I can always tell." Claire wanted to believe her, and for the first time in months, she almost did. She stayed until visiting hours ended, then took the subway home to her studio apartment in Queens, still wearing her work clothes, still carrying Ethan's card like a talisman. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it, cramped, cold, filled with textbooks she couldn't bear to sell and sketches she couldn't bear to finish. But tomorrow, she thought as she fell into bed without even changing. Tomorrow she'd find out what happened when the invisible girl finally let herself be seen. Claire woke up to 17 missed calls. She'd overslept, something she never did, and her phone was vibrating itself off the nightstand in a desperate attempt to get her attention. The first 3 calls were from numbers she didn't recognize. The next 5 were from the hospital. The rest were from a contact that simply read E. Calloway. Her stomach dropped. She grabbed the phone, hands shaking as she dialed the hospital back. It rang twice before Patricia answered, her usual calm replaced by something urgent. "Claire, thank God. Your father's fine. He's fine. But there's been a situation with his account." "What kind of situation?" "The payment system flagged his file this morning. Something about insurance verification. They're saying his coverage was suspended pending review, and if it's not resolved by end of business today, they'll have to transfer him to—" "No." Claire was already pulling on yesterday's clothes, her heart hammering. "No, that's not possible. I paid everything. I'm current on all the bills." "I know, honey, but the system shows a hold placed at 6 a.m. this morning. I've never seen anything like it. It's like someone went in and just froze everything." Claire's blood went cold. She remembered Victoria's parting words, the venom in her eyes. "You just made a very big mistake." "I'll be there in 30 minutes, she said, already out the door. The subway took 45 minutes because of course it did, because the universe had decided that last night's miracle needed to be balanced with this morning's nightmare. Claire spent the entire ride trying to reach the billing department, getting transferred between automated systems that seemed designed specifically to make people give up. When she finally burst into Mount Sinai's billing office, she found exactly what she'd feared, a wall of bureaucracy that no amount of pleading could penetrate. "I'm sorry, Ms. Bennett, but the hold was placed by the insurance company. We can't override it without their authorization." The billing coordinator looked genuinely sympathetic, which somehow made it worse. "Then let me talk to them." "They don't take calls until 9 a.m. Claire looked at the clock. 8:47. She wanted to scream. Instead, she went to her father's room and sat beside his bed, watching him sleep peacefully, unaware that his daughter was drowning. The morning light made him look smaller somehow, more fragile, like he might disappear if she stopped watching. "I'm going to fix this," she whispered. "I promise." But she had no idea how. At 1:47 p.m., Claire stood outside Calloway Industries headquarters, staring up at the gleaming tower of glass and steel that seemed to touch the clouds. She'd spent the morning on hold with the insurance company, who'd finally admitted that yes, there was a hold, and no, they couldn't tell her who'd placed it, and no, there was nothing she could do about it without a lawyer she couldn't afford. She'd considered not coming, considered walking away from whatever this was with Ethan before it got more complicated, before Victoria could do any more damage. But then she'd remembered his card, his offer, The way he'd looked at her like she was someone worth knowing. And she'd remembered that she had exactly 4 hours to figure out how to save her father. The lobby was all marble and glass, designed to make normal people feel small. Claire walked to the reception desk in her discount jeans and secondhand coat, very aware that she didn't belong here. "I have an appointment with Ethan Calloway," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The receptionist, a woman with perfect makeup and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, looked her up and down. "Name?" "Claire Bennett." The woman typed something, her expression shifting from dismissive to surprised. "Of course, Ms. Bennett. Mr. Calloway is expecting you. 40th floor, elevator bank C. Someone will meet you." The elevator was glass, too, offering a view of the city as it climbed. Claire watched Manhattan spread out below her, all those millions of people living their lives, completely unaware that hers was falling apart. The doors opened onto a reception area that looked like it belonged in a museum. Abstract art on the walls, furniture that was probably worth more than her father's hospital bills, and a view that made her dizzy. "Ms. Bennett." A woman in a crisp suit appeared from nowhere. "I'm Sarah, Mr. Calloway's assistant. He's just finishing a call. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine." Claire's voice came out smaller than she intended. Sarah led her down a hallway lined with more art, modern pieces that Claire's trained eye recognized as significant. A Rothko, a Basquiat, a small sculpture that looked suspiciously like a Giacometti. "Here we are." Sarah opened a door to reveal an office that was less corporate than Claire expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, yes, but also books everywhere, scattered papers, a child's drawing taped to the wall behind the desk, evidence of actual human occupancy. Ethan stood with his back to her, phone pressed to his ear, looking out at the city. He'd ditched the suit jacket, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messed like he'd been running his hands through it. "I don't care what the board thinks," he was saying. "Tell them the expansion timeline stays as is, or they can find a new CEO." A pause. "Good. Send me the revised contracts by end of day." He hung up and turned, his expression softening when he saw her. "Claire, I was starting to think you'd changed your mind." "I almost did." She stayed near the door, suddenly uncertain. In the restaurant, with the storm and the shock of everything, it had felt almost normal. Here, in his world, the distance between them felt impossible to cross. "But you didn't." He gestured to a sitting area near the windows, a couch and chairs that probably cost more than her rent. "Come sit, please." Claire perched on the edge of the couch, her hands twisted in her lap. Ethan settled into the chair across from her, close enough to talk, but far enough to not feel trapped. "How's your father?" he asked. And just like that, Claire's carefully constructed composure cracked. "Someone froze his insurance," she said, the words tumbling out. "This morning. The hospital's going to transfer him to a state facility if I can't fix it by 5 p.m., and I can't fix it because the insurance company won't tell me who placed the hold or how to remove it, and I know it was Victoria. I know it was, but I can't prove it. And even if I could—" "Claire." Ethan's voice was gentle. "Breathe." She realized she'd been talking without air, her chest tight with panic. She forced herself to take a breath, then another. "What's the facility name?" Ethan had his phone out. "Mount Sinai, but I don't think you can—" He was already dialing. "Michael, Ethan Calloway, I need you to look into something." A pause. "No, it's personal. Patient name is—" He looked at Claire. "Thomas Bennett," she whispered. "Thomas Bennett, Mount Sinai Cardiac Unit. Someone placed a hold on his insurance this morning. I need it removed in the next hour, and I need to know who placed it." Another pause. "I don't care if it's Saturday. That's why I pay you retainer fees that could fund a small country." He hung up and looked at Claire. "My lawyer. If anyone can untangle insurance bureaucracy, it's him. I can't afford— Whoop'em." "You're not paying for it." Ethan cut her off. "And before you argue, remember that I'm the one who put you in Victoria's crosshairs. This is my responsibility." "You didn't force me to speak Italian." "No, but I made a spectacle of it. I knew what Victoria was like, and I did it anyway because I was curious." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Let me fix this. Then we can talk about the painting." Claire wanted to argue more, wanted to maintain some shred of independence, but she was out of options and out of time, and pride seemed like a stupid thing to die on. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Ethan's phone buzzed. He read something, typed back. Michael says he'll have an answer within the hour. In the meantime, he stood, walked to the wall behind his desk, and pressed something that made a panel slide open. Behind it was a painting. Claire forgot about the insurance, about Victoria, about everything except the canvas in front of her. It was a portrait, 17th century, Italian school, probably Venetian based on the color palette. A woman in dark clothing, her face turned slightly away, illuminated by candlelight that the artist had captured with impossible skill. But the painting was in terrible condition. The varnish had yellowed and cracked, there was water damage along the bottom edge, and someone had tried to repair a tear down the center with what looked like household glue. It's been in my family for generations, Ethan said quietly. The story goes that my great-great-grandfather bought it off a bankrupt nobleman in Venice. It hung in every house we owned. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the woman in the painting, made up whole histories for her. Claire moved closer, her trained eye cataloging the damage. Someone tried to restore it. 3 times. The last one was 20 years ago. They wanted to repaint the damaged sections, make it look new. My mother refused. She was right to. Claire's fingers hovered over the canvas, not quite touching. It's extraordinary. Even damaged, you can see the skill. The way he captured the light, the layers of glaze. This isn't just any Italian portrait. This is someone significant. Can you save it? Claire turned to look at him. In the diffused light from the windows, Ethan looked younger, more vulnerable. This wasn't about money or status. This was about family, about history, about preserving something that mattered. I can try, she said, but it'll take time, months probably, and I'll need a proper studio, materials, time to research the best approach. Done. Ethan was already moving to his desk, pulling out files. There's a studio on the 3rd floor that we use for client presentations. It's yours. I'll have my assistant set up an account for materials. As for time, he looked up. The job offer was real, Claire. Salary, benefits, whatever you need. I don't understand why you're doing this. Because I want to. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Because my daughter needs to see that the painting her great-grandmother loved can be saved. Because you clearly love this work, and I have the resources to let you do it. Because his phone rang. He answered immediately. Michael, what did you find? Claire watched his expression change as he listened, watched the warmth drain away and get replaced by something cold and hard. Are you certain? A pause. Send me everything, every detail. Another pause. No, don't contact her yet. I'll handle it personally. He hung up and looked at Claire. Victoria Hale made a call to her father's company this morning. They own the 3rd largest health insurance provider in the state. She had them place the hold. Claire had known, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. So she really did. She tried to kill your father to get back at me. Ethan's voice was flat, emotionless in the way that meant he was furious. She used her family's money and influence to target a dying man because I embarrassed her in a restaurant. Can your lawyer fix it? Already done. The hold's been removed and Michael's having some very pointed conversations with their legal department about abuse of authority. He looked at her. Your father's safe. They won't try this again. The relief was so intense Claire had to sit down. Thank you. I don't know how to... Don't thank me yet. Ethan was pacing now, that same controlled energy she'd seen at the restaurant. Victoria won't stop here. She'll come at you differently. Harder. She has resources and connections, and she knows how to use them. So what do I do? You let me handle it. He stopped pacing, looked at her directly. And you decide if this job offer is still something you want. Because taking it means stepping into my world, and my world is full of people like Victoria who don't forgive and don't forget. Claire thought about her father, stable and safe, because a billionaire had made a phone call. She thought about the painting behind Ethan, waiting for someone to care enough to save it. She thought about Florence, about the life she'd left behind, about the person she'd been before grief and exhaustion had worn her down to nothing. Show me the studio, she said. Ethan's smile was small but genuine. Follow me. The 3rd floor was quieter, more industrial. Ethan led her through a maze of hallways until they reached a large room with northern exposure and enough space to work. It was currently full of presentation boards and marketing materials, but Claire could see the potential, the light, the ventilation, the blank walls waiting for her to make them useful. "We can clear this out by Monday," Ethan said. "Set it up however you need. It's perfect." Claire walked to the windows, looked out at the city. From here she could see the edges of Queens, the neighborhood where her father's apartment sat empty, where her own studio held all the remnants of her old dreams. "I'll need to see him," she said suddenly. "Your lawyer said my father's safe, but I need to see him." "Of course." Ethan checked his watch. "I'll have my driver take you, but first—" He pulled out a contract from his jacket pocket. "This is the employment agreement. Same terms I mentioned last night. Take it home, read it, have a lawyer look at it if you want. No pressure." Claire took the contract, its weight substantial in her hands. "You just happened to have this ready?" "I had Sarah draft it this morning." He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I was optimistic, or presumptuous. That too." He walked her back to the elevator, pressed the button for the lobby. "Claire, I meant what I said. This is a real job offer, not charity. I need that painting restored, and you're the first person who's looked at it and seen possibility instead of damage." The elevator arrived. Claire stepped in, turned to face him. "I'll read the contract, and I'll give you an answer Monday. That's all I can ask." Ethan held the door. "And Claire? Your father. I meant that too. Whatever he needs, whatever the insurance won't cover, it's handled." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Why are you doing all this for someone you met yesterday?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, his hand still holding the elevator door. "My daughter asked me last week if I liked my life. I told her of course I did, and she looked at me with those 6-year-old eyes and said, 'You don't smile enough for someone who likes their life, Daddy.'" He smiled then, but it was sad. She was right. I haven't smiled, really smiled, in longer than I can remember. Until last night. Until you. The elevator door closed before Claire could respond, carrying her down to the lobby where a driver was already waiting with Ethan's car. The ride to Mount Sinai passed in a blur. Claire sat in the back seat, the contract unread on her lap, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Yesterday morning, she'd been a waitress with no prospects and a dying father. Now she had a job offer that could change everything, an enemy who wanted to destroy her, and a billionaire who seemed genuinely interested in her as a person. It was terrifying. Her father was awake when she arrived, looking more alert than he had in weeks. Patricia was checking his vitals, her face breaking into a smile when she saw Claire. "There she is. I told him you'd be by." Patricia finished with the monitors. "Everything's cleared up with the insurance? I don't know what you did, but it worked." "I made friends with the right people," Claire said, sinking into the bedside chair. Her father's hand found hers, his grip still weak but present. "Trouble?" His voice was raspy from the breathing tube they'd removed last week. "Nothing I can't handle." Claire squeezed back gently. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." He managed a small smile. "But better. The doctor said my numbers are improving. Might even get to go home in a few weeks if this keeps up." Home. Claire tried to imagine it, her father back in his apartment, needing care she couldn't afford on a waitress's salary, but maybe now, with Ethan's offer, with the salary and benefits in the contract sitting heavy in her purse. "Dad, something happened last night." She told him everything, watching his expression shift from confusion to concern to something that looked almost like pride. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "You spoke Italian to a billionaire's mother," he finally said. "I did." "At the fanciest restaurant in Manhattan." "Yes." "And he bought the whole place." "Apparently." Her father started laughing, which turned into coughing, which made Patricia rush back in with water and worried looks. But when he'd recovered, his eyes were bright with something Claire hadn't seen in months. "Your mother would have loved this," he said. "She always said you were too smart to hide." "I wasn't hiding. I was surviving." "Maybe." He squeezed her hand again. "But surviving isn't living, kiddo. If this man is offering you a chance to do what you love, if he's treating you with respect, then I think you should take it. Even though his ex-girlfriend tried to kill you? Especially because of that." He smiled. "Means you matter enough to be a threat. That's not nothing." Claire stayed until visiting hours ended, reading her father the contract terms, discussing the implications, arguing about whether accepting help was the same as accepting charity. By the time she left, the city had transformed into its nighttime self, all lights and noise and endless possibility. She took the subway home, the contract now worn from reading and rereading. The terms were generous, almost suspiciously so. Salary that would cover her father's care with enough left over to actually save money. Full benefits including health insurance that would cover her father as a dependent. A research budget for materials and travel if needed. It was everything she'd given up when she left Florence, and it scared her more than she wanted to admit. Back in her apartment, Claire spread the contract on her tiny kitchen table and stared at it like it might disappear. Outside her window, Queens hummed with its usual energy. Car horns, distant sirens, the bodega on the corner still open despite the late hour. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Eleanor Calloway. I assume by now you've heard what Victoria did. I want you to know that I had no part in it, and I find her actions reprehensible. However, my warning stands. My son is attracted to broken things he thinks he can fix. Don't let yourself become another project he abandons when the novelty wears off. Claire stared at the message for a long time before responding. Maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I'm just bent. The response came immediately. Then you're stronger than I gave you credit for. Monday, 10 a.m., my residence. We need to talk before you make any decisions about my son's offer. Claire wanted to refuse, wanted to tell Eleanor where she could shove her intimidation tactics, but something in the message felt less like a threat and more like a warning from someone who actually cared. I'll be there. She spent the weekend researching Ethan Calloway. Not the business profile stuff. She didn't care about his net worth or his shipping routes or his latest acquisition. She wanted to know about the man who defended a waitress in front of Manhattan's elite. What she found was surprisingly sparse. A dead wife. No, not dead. Divorced. Messy split when their daughter was 2. The ex-wife had given up custody completely, moved to California, remarried within a year. There were photos of Ethan with Emma at various charity events, the little girl's face blurred for privacy, but her small hand always clutched in his. A single father who'd raised his daughter alone while building an empire. No wonder he looked so tired. There were also photos of Victoria, dozens of them, spanning the last 6 months. Victoria at galas, at restaurant openings, at charity auctions, always perfectly dressed and photographed, always with Ethan looking vaguely uncomfortable in the background. And then Claire found the gossip blogs from yesterday. They'd already spun the restaurant incident into a scandal. Some claimed Claire was a gold digger. Others suggested she was Ethan's secret mistress. A few particularly creative ones implied she was a long-lost relative come to claim inheritance. None of them came close to the truth, that she was just a tired woman who'd spoken the wrong language at the wrong time and accidentally caught the attention of someone who still knew how to be curious. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Claire put on the nicest outfit she owned, a navy dress she'd bought for her graduation from the Florence program. Back when she'd thought her life would involve museum galleries and academic conferences, instead of serving tables and dodging medical bills. Eleanor Calloway's residence was on the Upper East Side, naturally. A limestone townhouse that probably cost more than Claire would earn in 10 lifetimes. The door was answered by a housekeeper who looked like she'd been born judging people. "Ms. Bennett, Mrs. Calloway is expecting you in the conservatory." The conservatory turned out to be a glass-roofed room filled with plants that probably required a full-time botanist. Eleanor sat at a wrought iron table, tea service laid out with the kind of precision that suggested this was a performance as much as a conversation. Sit. It wasn't a request. Claire sat. Eleanor poured tea without asking if Claire wanted any, added sugar and cream in proportions that suggested she'd already decided how Claire took her tea, and pushed the cup across the table. "You read the contract." "I did." "And?" "It's generous. It's a trap." Eleanor's eyes were sharp. "My son is brilliant in business. In relationships, he's a disaster. He sees someone struggling, someone with potential, and he convinces himself he can save them. His ex-wife was the same, an aspiring actress who needed a break. He married her, funded her career, gave her everything she wanted. The moment she didn't need him anymore, she left." Claire sipped the tea. It was perfect, which was annoying. "I'm not his ex-wife." "No, you're smarter, which makes you more dangerous." Eleanor leaned forward. "My son hasn't shown genuine interest in anyone since Emma was born. Now suddenly he's buying restaurants and offering jobs to waitresses? He's not thinking clearly. Maybe he's just being kind. Ethan doesn't do kind. He does strategic. Eleanor's voice softened slightly. I'm not trying to be cruel, Claire. I'm trying to protect my son from making another mistake. And I'm trying to protect you from being collateral damage when this inevitably ends badly. Claire set down her teacup carefully. Mrs. Calloway, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting. I gave up a career I loved to save my father. I've worked jobs that destroyed my body and my pride. I've survived things that would have broken softer people. So if Ethan wants to offer me a job, I'm going to take it. Not because I need saving, but because I earned it. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, studying Claire with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Good. That's what I needed to hear. I don't understand. If you'd been intimidated, if you'd backed down or made excuses, I would have convinced Ethan to rescind the offer. Eleanor refilled both their cups. But you have spine. You'll need it, dealing with Victoria and the rest of the vultures who circle my son. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take the job. You're going to restore that painting my mother loved. And you're going to be honest with Ethan, brutally honest, the way no one else in his life is. And if I develop feelings for him, then you'll deal with them like an adult instead of a teenager. Eleanor's voice was brisk. But remember that my granddaughter comes first, always. If you hurt Emma, I will destroy you in ways Victoria can't even imagine. It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like acceptance. Claire left the townhouse an hour later with Eleanor's grudging approval and a splitting headache from the intensity of the conversation. She had 2 hours before she was supposed to meet Ethan at his office to give her answer. She spent them in Central Park, walking the paths she used to take when she first arrived in New York, young and full of dreams about a career in restoration. The trees were bare now, winter not quite ready to give way to spring, everything caught in that in-between state of waiting for something to change. Claire found herself at the conservatory garden, looking at the empty flower beds that would explode with color in a few months. Potential, waiting to be realized. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. No pressure, but Emma insisted I tell you she wants to meet the lady who made Daddy smile. Apparently that's newsworthy in our house. Claire smiled despite herself, typed back. Tell Emma I'm on my way. She took the subway to Midtown, walked into Callaway Industries with her head held high, and rode the elevator to the 40th floor like she belonged there. Sarah met her with a knowing smile. He's been checking his watch every 5 minutes. Very unlike him. Sorry I'm late. You're not. He's just nervous. Sarah walked her to the office. Fair warning, Emma's here. Monday's his custody day, and she had a half day at school. Claire's heart rate picked up. Meeting the daughter felt significant in a way that signing a contract didn't. Ethan's office door was open. Inside, she could see him sitting on the floor, building what looked like an elaborate castle out of blocks. Across from him, a small girl with dark curls and her father's gray eyes was narrating an entire storyline about dragons and princesses. And then the dragon says, I'm sorry for burning your village, but I was hangry. Emma placed a plastic dragon on top of the castle. That's a word Daddy taught me. Hangry means hungry and angry at the same time. It's a very useful word, Ethan agreed seriously. Emma looked up and saw Claire in the doorway. Are you the Italian lady? Claire blinked. Yes? Daddy said you can talk to Nonna in her secret language. Can you teach me? I want to have secret languages too. Ethan stood, brushing off his expensive pants, now covered in carpet lint. Emma, this is Miss Bennett, the one I told you about. Call me Claire, she said, moving into the room. And yes, I can teach you some Italian if your dad says it's okay. Emma's face lit up. Daddy, can she? Please? We'll see. Ethan's expression was soft in a way Claire hadn't seen before. This was the real him, she realized. Not the cold CEO or the exhausted single father, but someone who built block castles on Monday afternoons. Claire and I need to talk about work stuff first. Why don't you show her your drawing? Emma bounded to the desk and grabbed a piece of paper covered in crayon. It showed stick figures, a tall one, a small one, and a dog. That's me and Daddy and the dog we're going to get when I'm 7, Emma explained. What do you think we should name him? Claire crouched down to Emma's level, studying the drawing seriously. He looks like a Bruno to me. Or maybe a Wellington. Wellington. Emma's eyes went wide. Like the fancy boots. Exactly like the fancy boots. Emma threw her arms around Claire in an impulsive hug that nearly knocked her over. I like you. You should come to my birthday party. It's in 2 months and we're having a bouncy castle. Over Emma's head, Claire met Ethan's eyes. He was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read, hope mixed with fear, mixed with something that looked dangerously close to affection. This was the trap Eleanor had warned her about. Not the job, not the money, but this. The little girl who needed a mother figure, and the father who was so clearly desperate to give his daughter everything she deserved. Claire could walk away now, thank Ethan for his kindness, decline the job, go back to her safe, small life. Or she could step forward into the unknown and see what happened when she stopped hiding. Emma released her, running back to her castle. Ethan gestured to his private conference room, a glass-walled space where they could talk and still keep an eye on his daughter. So, he said once they were inside, you survived Eleanor. She's terrifying. She's protective. Ethan leaned against the table. What did she say? That you have a savior complex and I shouldn't let myself become a project. Claire pulled the contract from her bag. She's not wrong, is she? Ethan was quiet for a moment. No, he finally said. She's not. I do tend to see potential in people and want to help them realize it. And sometimes that comes from ego, the idea that I can fix things that are broken. But Claire, I don't think you're broken. I think you're incredibly strong, and you've been forced into a situation that's beneath your capabilities. All I'm offering is a chance to do the work you were meant to do. And if I fail, if I can't save the painting, then we tried. He straightened. I'm not looking for guarantees. I'm looking for someone who cares enough to try. Claire looked at the contract in her hands, all those pages of legal language that boiled down to a simple choice. Stay safe or risk everything. She thought about her father, about Florence, about the woman she'd been before fear turned her invisible. She thought about Emma, drawing pictures of dogs she didn't have yet, and Ethan, building castles on his office floor. She signed the contract. Okay, she said, sliding it across the table. Let's save your painting. Ethan's smile was genuine this time, reaching his eyes in a way that made him look years younger. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen me work. I'm very particular about my studio setup. I'm counting on it. He picked up the contract, signed his own name beneath hers. When can you start? How about now? They spent the rest of the afternoon planning the restoration. What materials she'd need, what research had to be done, how to document every step of the process. Emma eventually got bored and fell asleep on the office couch, her castle abandoned but still standing. By the time Claire left that evening, the sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that reminded her of Italian frescoes. She had a job she loved, a chance to use her skills, and a billionaire who looked at her like she mattered. She also had an enemy who wouldn't stop until Claire was destroyed. But as she rode the subway home to Queens, Claire found she didn't care. She'd been invisible for so long. It was time to be seen. The studio took 3 days to set up properly. Claire spent those days covered in dust and purpose, transforming the sterile corporate space into something that felt like hers. She'd requisitioned everything: proper lighting that mimicked northern exposure, ventilation systems to handle chemical fumes, storage for the dozens of pigments and solvents she'd need, a workbench at exactly the right height. Sarah had watched with barely concealed amusement as Claire rejected the first desk they brought up. It's 4 inches too tall, Claire had explained, running her hand along the surface. I'll be hunched over for hours. My back can't take it. Most people would just use a taller chair. Most people aren't doing microsurgery on 300-year-old canvas. By Wednesday, the space was ready. Claire stood in the center of her new studio, breathing in the familiar smell of linseed oil and turpentine, and felt something loosen in her chest. For the first time since leaving Florence, she felt like herself again. Ethan appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee, Emma trailing behind him with a juice box. Ready? He asked. Claire nodded. Let's bring her up. The painting arrived in a custom crate, handled by specialists who looked terrified of dropping it. Claire supervised every step as they unwrapped it, mounted it on the easel she'd positioned to catch the best light, stepped back to really see it. Up close, the damage was worse than she'd thought. Someone had used regular household varnish during one restoration attempt, creating a yellowish film that obscured the original colors. The tear down the center had been repaired with what looked like craft glue, pulling the canvas fibers in the wrong direction. Water stains bloomed across the bottom third like bruises, but underneath all that, she could see the bones of something extraordinary. "It's worse than I thought," she said quietly. Ethan's face fell. "So you can't—" "I didn't say that." Claire pulled out her magnifying glass, leaned in close. "I said it's worse than I thought, which means it'll be harder, take longer. But see this?" She pointed to a section where the original paint showed through. "That's genuine ultramarine. The expensive kind made from lapis lazuli. Nobody uses that on a throwaway portrait. Whoever painted this wasn't just good, they were important." Emma had climbed onto a stool to see better. "She looks sad." "She does, doesn't she?" Claire studied the woman's face, what little of it she could make out through the damage. "I wonder what her story was." "Nona said she was brave," Emma offered. "She said the lady in the painting did something scary, but it was the right thing to do." Claire glanced at Ethan, who shrugged. "My mother has always been dramatic about this painting. Family legend mixed with wishful thinking. Maybe," Claire turned back to the canvas, "or maybe your mother sees something we don't yet." She spent the next week just documenting. Every crack, every stain, every misguided attempt at repair had to be photographed, measured, cataloged. It was tedious work, but necessary. You couldn't fix something unless you understood exactly how it was broken. Ethan started coming by every afternoon, usually around 3 when Emma got out of school. At first, Claire thought he was checking up on her, making sure his investment was worthwhile. But she quickly realized he just wanted to watch her work. "Doesn't this bore you?" she asked one day, carefully testing a section of varnish with solvent. "No?" He was sitting in the chair she'd brought up for visitors, Emma curled in his lap with a picture book. "It's the opposite of boring. You know exactly what you're doing. There's no hesitation, no second guessing." "There's plenty of second guessing. I just do it internally." Claire sat back, stretching her cramped shoulders. "Every time I apply solvent, I'm terrified I'll dissolve paint along with the varnish. Every time I touch the canvas, I worry I'll cause more damage. This isn't confidence, it's controlled panic." "You hide it well." "Years of practice." She set down her tools, turned to face him. "Can I ask you something? Why did you really hire me? And don't say it's just about the painting." Ethan was quiet for a moment, his hand absently stroking Emma's hair as she read. "Do you know what my father told me when he handed over the company? He said, 'The shipping business isn't about moving cargo. It's about understanding what people value enough to send across an ocean.' I thought I understood what he meant. But lately I've realized I stopped understanding what I value, what matters. And I matter. You care about things." He said it simply. "You gave up everything for your father. You see beauty in damaged paintings. You speak honestly when everyone else tells me what they think I want to hear. Yes, you matter." Before Claire could respond, her phone rang. The hospital. Her stomach dropped the way it always did when they called. "I have to take this." She stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. "This is Claire." "Ms. Bennett, this is Dr. Okonkwo. I wanted to let you know we're discharging your father tomorrow." Claire's knees went weak. "Tomorrow? Is everything okay?" "Everything's excellent. His vitals have stabilized. The latest scans look good. He'll need outpatient care and physical therapy, but there's no reason to keep him here." A pause. "I have to say, whatever changes you made to his care plan worked. I've never seen such a dramatic improvement." After she hung up, Claire stood in the hallway trying to process it. Her father was coming home. After months of uncertainty, of watching him hover between life and death, he was actually coming home. "Good news?" Ethan had appeared beside her, Emma still in his arms. "My dad's being discharged tomorrow." Claire's voice cracked. "He's going to be okay." "That's wonderful." Ethan shifted Emma to his other hip. "Does he have help set up? Someone to stay with him?" Claire's relief immediately tangled with logistics. "I'll take a few days off, get him settled. His apartment has stairs, so that'll be a challenge. And the home health aide the hospital recommended costs—" She stopped herself. "Sorry, you don't need to hear my problems." "What if Emma and I came with you tomorrow, to bring him home?" Ethan said it casually, like it was nothing. My car's more comfortable than a taxi, and Emma's been asking when she can meet him. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He looked at Emma. What do you think? Want to meet Claire's dad? Emma nodded enthusiastically. Is he nice? The nicest, Claire said, her throat tight. He'll love you. They picked up her father at noon the next day. Thomas Bennett looked smaller than Claire remembered, thinner, but his eyes were bright when he saw her. The nurse helped him into a wheelchair despite his protests that he could walk just fine. I've been lying down for 3 months, he grumbled. My legs aren't decorative. Hospital policy, Mr. Bennett. The nurse was unimpressed by his complaints. You can argue with gravity once you're discharged. Ethan's car was waiting at the entrance. Emma pressed her face against the window, waving enthusiastically. Thomas stopped mid-transfer from wheelchair to car seat, staring. That's your boss? He whispered to Claire. And his daughter Emma. They offered to help. You didn't mention he looked like a cologne ad. Dad. I'm just saying, if I was 30 years younger and into men, Dad! But Thomas was grinning, and Claire realized it had been months since she'd seen him smile like that. Ethan helped him into the car with surprising gentleness, while Emma immediately started chattering about her dog plan and her birthday party, and did Mr. Bennett want to come? I'd be honored, Thomas said seriously. I haven't been to a bouncy castle in decades. The drive to Queens took 40 minutes through midday traffic. Claire sat in the front seat, listening to her father and Emma discuss the merits of different dog breeds, while Ethan navigated with the focus of someone who clearly never drove himself anywhere. You're going the wrong way, Claire said as he turned away from her father's apartment. No, I'm not. My dad lives in Astoria. You're heading toward Forest Hills. Ethan kept driving. I took the liberty of arranging something. If you hate it, we'll turn around. 10 minutes later, they pulled up to a garden apartment complex that looked nothing like her father's walk-up. Ethan parked and turned to face Claire's growing confusion. Ground floor, 2-bedroom, full accessibility modifications. Grab bars in the bathroom, walk-in shower, wide doorways for wheelchair access if needed. The lease is month to month, so if your father hates it, no commitment. He said it quickly, like he was worried she'd interrupt. The first 6 months are covered as part of your employment benefits package. After that, the rent's reasonable enough that you can afford it on your salary. Claire stared at him. You rented my father an apartment. I facilitated a housing solution that addresses his medical needs. You rented my father an apartment! Is that a good surprise scream or a bad surprise scream? Emma asked from the back seat. Thomas was laughing. I think it's a shocked scream, sweetheart. I can't accept this. Claire was already shaking her head. This is too much. The job, the medical care, now an apartment. Ethan, there are limits. Why? He turned in his seat to face her fully. Why are there limits? I have resources. You have needs. You're working for me, doing a job that matters. Why shouldn't I ensure your father has proper recovery housing? Because it's not normal. Bosses don't do this. Then I'm not a normal boss. His voice was calm, reasonable, infuriating. Claire, I'm not trying to buy you or control you. I'm trying to remove obstacles so you can focus on the work. Is that really so terrible? Claire wanted to argue more, but her father had already opened his door and was being helped out by Ethan's driver. Emma had bounced out after him, excitedly pointing at the garden area where someone had planted early crocuses. The apartment was perfect. That was the worst part. Spacious and bright, with everything her father needed and nothing he didn't. The furniture was simple but comfortable. The kitchen set up for someone with limited mobility, the bedroom on the ground floor with windows overlooking a small courtyard. Thomas walked through it slowly, running his hand along the walls like he couldn't quite believe it was real. When he turned back to look at Claire and Ethan, his eyes were wet. This is too much, he said quietly. That's what I said, Claire muttered. But I'm not too proud to accept it. Thomas held out his hand to Ethan. Thank you. For my daughter, for this, for all of it. Ethan shook his hand. Take care of yourself, sir. Claire needs you around. They spent the afternoon helping Thomas settle in. Emma appointed herself the official organizer of kitchen items, which meant everything ended up arranged by color rather than function. Ethan assembled furniture with the focused intensity he probably brought to corporate mergers. And Claire tried to process the fact that her life had completely transformed in less than 2 weeks. By evening, her father was settled in his new bedroom. Emma was asleep in the car, and Claire was standing in the parking lot trying to find words. I don't know how to thank you, she finally said. Then don't. Ethan leaned against the car. Just keep working on the painting. That's all I need. Is it? The question came out sharper than she intended. Because this feels like more than an employer helping an employee. This feels like, I don't know what this feels like. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. You're right, he said finally. This is more than professional. I'm not good at this, at letting people in, at being honest about what I want. But Claire, I haven't felt this alive in years. Watching you work, seeing you with Emma, even arguing with you about apartments, it reminds me that life can be more than obligation and strategy. Ethan, I'm not asking for anything. He held up his hand. I know this is complicated. You work for me, there's a power dynamic. Victoria's probably plotting revenge as we speak. But I needed you to know that this isn't charity. It's selfish. I'm doing this because being around you makes me remember who I used to be before I forgot how to be happy. Claire's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. That's a lot of pressure to put on a person. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be. She took a breath. Just give me time to figure out what this is. Because you're right. It's complicated. And I've spent the last year in survival mode. I don't trust easy things anymore. Good. Ethan smiled. Because nothing about this is easy. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Claire spent her days in the studio, slowly removing centuries of damage layer by careful layer. Ethan visited most afternoons, sometimes with Emma, sometimes alone. They talked about art and business, and the strange parallel between restoring paintings and building companies. Both required patience, vision, and the willingness to work with what you had instead of what you wished for. Her father's recovery progressed steadily. Claire visited every evening, bringing dinner and stories about her day. Thomas listened with the satisfied expression of a man watching his daughter finally live instead of just survive. He's good for you, her father said one night. Who, Ethan? No, the mailman? Yes, Ethan. Thomas rolled his eyes. You smile more, you stand straighter, you're remembering who you are. It's the work that's doing that. Keep telling yourself that. But Claire knew he was right. It wasn't just the restoration that had brought her back to life. It was the way Ethan listened when she explained her process, genuinely interested in the chemistry of paint removal. It was Emma asking questions about Renaissance art with the serious curiosity of a 6-year-old. It was feeling valued for her knowledge instead of her ability to carry heavy trays. She was in the studio late one Friday, working on a particularly stubborn section of varnish, when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The image loaded slowly. When it finally appeared, Claire's blood went cold. It was a photo of her father's new apartment building, taken from across the street. Recent, based on the daylight and the car parked out front that she recognized from this morning. The message that followed was simple. Cute place. Would be a shame if something happened to it, or to the sick old man inside. Stay away from Ethan, or I'll make sure you lose everything that matters. Claire's hands were shaking as she screenshot the message and forwarded it to Ethan. His response came within seconds. Don't leave the building. I'm sending security. She tried to focus on work, but the painting swam in front of her eyes. Victoria knew where her father lived, had probably been watching for weeks, waiting for the right moment to strike. Ethan arrived 20 minutes later, his face set in hard lines. 2 security personnel followed him, professionals who immediately began discussing protection protocols and threat assessment. She's escalating, Ethan said, pulling up the photo on his own phone. This isn't just harassment anymore. This is a direct threat. Can we prove it's her? The number's a burner, but who else would it be? He showed the message to his security team. I want coverage on Thomas Bennett's apartment 24/7. I want Claire's building monitored, and I want to know every move Victoria makes. That'll cost a fortune, Claire said weakly. I don't care. Ethan's voice was ice. She's crossed every line. I won't let her hurt you or your father. One of the security guys cleared his throat. Mr. Calloway, if I may, threats like this are often leverage for negotiation. Perhaps the lady wants to talk? She can talk to my lawyers. Ethan dismissed the suggestion. Claire, I need you to stay at the office tonight. It's not safe. I'm not hiding. Claire surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. If I run every time Victoria threatens me, I'll never stop running. My father has security now. I'll be careful, but I'm not letting her win. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He almost smiled. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can it be both? The security detail insisted on sweeping her apartment before she went home that night. They found nothing suspicious, but installed additional locks and a panic button that connected directly to their monitoring center. Claire lay awake for hours, jumping at every noise, second-guessing her decision to stay defiant. But in the morning, she got up, went to the studio, and kept working on the painting. By the end of the month, Claire had removed most of the damaged varnish. What emerged was breathtaking. The woman in the portrait had dark eyes that seemed to follow you across the room, her expression complex, not quite sad, not quite defiant, something richer and more human. The painter had captured her in a moment of decision, Claire thought. That split second before you commit to something that will change everything. She looks like you. Claire startled. She'd been so absorbed she hadn't heard Eleanor enter the studio. I don't see the resemblance, Claire said, recovering. Not physically. Eleanor moved closer to the painting, but in her expression, that look of someone who's decided to stop hiding. She turned to Claire. My mother used to say this woman was involved in a scandal, left her wealthy family to be with an artist, or refused an arranged marriage, or testified against a corrupt politician. The story changed depending on her mood. But the constant was that this woman made a choice that cost her everything, and she never regretted it. Sounds like wishful thinking. Maybe. Eleanor's smile was slight. Or maybe my mother recognized a kindred spirit. She left her own family to marry my father. They disowned her. She never looked back. Claire studied the painted woman with new appreciation. What was her name? Your mother? Catherine. She died when Ethan was 12. This was her favorite painting. Eleanor's voice softened. She used to tell him stories about it, made him promise he'd never sell it, never let anyone erase its history. Even the damage, she said, was part of the story. She was right. Claire touched the edge of the frame gently. The scars tell us how the painting survived, what it went through. Erasing them would be erasing truth, which is why you're the right person for this job. Eleanor turned to face her directly. I was wrong about you. I thought you were another opportunist, another person trying to use my son. But you actually care about the work, about doing it right. Thank you, I think. It's a compliment. Eleanor moved toward the door, then paused. Victoria came to see me yesterday. Claire's stomach dropped. What did she want? To convince me that you're a gold digger who's manipulating Ethan, that you're using Emma to secure your position, that you'll destroy our family the way his ex-wife did. Eleanor's voice was dry. I told her she was projecting her own character flaws onto you, and if she contacted me again, I'd have my lawyers file a harassment suit. That must have gone over well. She threw a vase at me. Fortunately, her aim is as poor as her judgment. Eleanor's eyes hardened. But she's desperate now. Desperate people are dangerous. Watch yourself. After Eleanor left, Claire stood in front of the painting for a long time, studying the woman's face. What choice had she made? What had it cost her? And had she really never regretted it? Penny for your thoughts. Ethan stood in the doorway, holding takeout bags that smelled amazing. Just wondering about her story, Claire said. Why she looked so determined? Maybe she just decided to be brave. Ethan set down the food. Chinese, okay? I remembered you said you loved the place on 3rd Avenue. You remembered that? I remember most things you say. He started unpacking containers. It's a problem, actually. I have an excellent memory for spreadsheets and shipping routes. Turns out it also works for random comments about lo mein preferences. They ate sitting on the floor of the studio, the painting watching over them like a chaperone. Ethan told her about Emma's latest school drama. Someone had stolen her favorite crayon, and Emma had delivered an impassioned speech about property rights that made her teacher call home. Claire told him about the pigment analysis she'd done, how the original colors were even more vibrant than she'd hoped. When can I tell Emma? Ethan asked. She keeps asking when the painting will be beautiful again. Tell her it's already beautiful. We're just helping people see it clearly. Claire wiped her hands on a rag. But if you mean when will it be finished, months still. I'm barely halfway through removing the old restoration work. Then I have to stabilize the canvas, address the tear, restore the damaged sections. Bus was I'll see. I wasn't rushing you. He smiled. I like having you here. It gives me an excuse to stop by. You own the building. You don't need an excuse. I need an excuse that doesn't make me look pathetic. His smile turned self-deprecating. My assistant has started teasing me about the number of spontaneous third-floor inspections I've been conducting. Claire's heart did that complicated thing again. Ethan, I know, complicated. Power dynamics. Too soon. He stood, started gathering the empty containers. But when this is over, when the painting is done and you're no longer technically my employee, would you consider having dinner with me? Real dinner, not takeout on the floor. Like a date? Exactly like a date. He met her eyes. I know I'm supposed to play it cool, maintain professional distance, but I'm terrible at pretending I don't feel things. And I feel things for you, Claire. Have since the moment you spoke Italian to my mother and refused to apologize for it. Claire should say no. Should maintain boundaries, protect herself. Remember that she worked for him and his ex-girlfriend was literally threatening to destroy her life. Ask me again when the painting's done, she said instead. See if you still want to. I will. Ethan headed for the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, I already know the answer will be yes. I'm just giving you time to catch up. After he left, Claire turned back to the painting. The woman stared back with those knowing eyes. Don't look at me like that, Claire muttered. You made your choice centuries ago. I'm still figuring mine out. But she was smiling as she said it. The next morning, everything changed. Claire arrived at the studio to find the door ajar. Her heart stopped. She'd locked it last night. She always locked it. The painting was too valuable to risk. She pushed the door open slowly, already knowing what she'd find, but hoping desperately she was wrong. The painting was still on the easel, but someone had taken a knife to it, carving a deep slash right through the woman's face, obliterating her expression, her eyes, everything that made the portrait breathe. Claire heard a sound that might have been a scream or might have been something dying. It came from her own throat. Security arrived within minutes. Police were called. Ethan appeared looking like he wanted to kill someone with his bare hands, but Claire barely registered any of it. She stood frozen in front of the destroyed painting, watching weeks of careful work reduced to violence. Claire, Ethan's voice came from far away. Claire, look at me. She couldn't. If she looked away, she might forget what it had looked like before, might lose the woman's face forever. Claire, please. She finally turned. Ethan pulled her into his arms, and she realized she was shaking. The police were asking questions. When had she left last night? Had she seen anyone suspicious? Were there security cameras? The cameras were disabled at 3 a.m., the security chief reported. Professional job. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. It was Victoria. Claire's voice sounded dead even to her own ears. She warned me, told me to stay away or lose everything that matters. Can you prove it? The police officer looked skeptical. We'll prove it. Ethan's voice was deadly calm. And then I'll destroy her the way she destroyed this. But as they filed reports and gave statements and went through the motions of official response, Claire knew the truth. Victoria had already won. The painting, 300 years of history, Eleanor's mother's favorite, Ethan's last connection to his grandmother, was ruined beyond saving. And it was Claire's fault for not protecting it better. This isn't on you, Ethan said, reading her expression. I should have been more careful. Should have set up better security. Should have what? Slept here? Installed a vault? He gripped her shoulders gently. This is on Victoria. Only Victoria. But Claire barely heard him. She was looking at the ruined painting, at the slash through the woman's face, and all she could think was that she'd failed. Failed Ethan. Failed Eleanor. Failed the artist who'd created something beautiful 3 centuries ago, only to have it destroyed by petty revenge. I need to go, she said abruptly. Claire, I need to be alone. Please. She left before he could argue, took the elevator down to the lobby, walked out into the cold morning air. Her phone was ringing. Ethan, probably, or the police with more questions, but she ignored it. She walked for hours, no destination in mind, just moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and she couldn't afford to feel right now. By the time she finally went home, it was dark. Her apartment felt too small, too empty. She sat on her bed, still in her coat, and finally let herself cry. The painting was gone. The woman with her determined eyes and her brave choice was gone. And Claire had no idea how to fix it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Emma, sent via Ethan's phone. Daddy says you're sad about the painting. I think you can fix it. You fix everything. Claire stared at the message through blurry eyes. The faith of a 6-year-old who didn't understand that some things couldn't be fixed. Except. Claire sat up slowly, her mind starting to work again. Emma was right. Not that Claire could fix everything, but that she could fix this. She grabbed her laptop, started pulling up files. The documentation she'd done. The photographs of every stage of the restoration. The analysis of original pigments, the measurements, the detailed notes on brushwork and technique. She had everything she needed to reconstruct the damaged section. Not perfectly. Nothing would ever perfectly replace what was lost. But she could restore the woman's face, bring back her expression, make her visible again. It would take months, would require research and testing and more skill than Claire was sure she possessed. But it was possible. Claire texted Ethan, I can save it. Not completely, but enough. I'll need time and resources, and you'll have to trust me. Can you do that? His response came immediately. I've trusted you from the beginning. Take whatever time you need. Claire set down her phone and pulled out her notebook, the one she'd used in Florence for her most complex projects. She started sketching, planning, calculating what would be required to resurrect something beautiful from catastrophic damage. By morning, she had a plan. And for the first time since finding the destroyed painting, she had hope. The reconstruction took 8 weeks of the most intense work Claire had ever done. She lived in the studio most days, sleeping on the couch Ethan had brought up, surviving on coffee and the meals Sarah ordered for her when she forgot to eat. The damaged section of the painting became her entire world, every brushstroke analyzed, every color mixed and remixed until it matched the original exactly. Eleanor visited on week 3, standing in the doorway for a long time before speaking. My mother would have hated this, she said finally. Claire's hand froze mid-stroke. I can stop. If you think it's wrong, I said she would have hated it. I didn't say you should stop. Eleanor moved closer, studying the emerging face with sharp eyes. She believed in preserving history exactly as it happened, damage and all. But she also believed in fighting back when someone tried to erase you. Victoria tried to erase this woman. You're making sure she failed. I'm trying. Claire sat back, her vision blurring from hours of close focus. But it's not the same. It'll never be the same. Nothing ever is. Eleanor's voice was surprisingly gentle. My mother died. My husband left. My son's wife abandoned her own child. None of it was the same after. But we survived. We adapted. This painting will, too. She left a check on Claire's work table before she went, more money than the restoration could possibly cost, with a note in elegant handwriting, for materials and for courage. E.C. Meanwhile, Ethan's lawyers were building their case against Victoria. They had the threatening text, the security footage showing someone disabling the cameras, and witness statements from building staff who'd seen a woman matching Victoria's description in the area that night. But Victoria's father had hired an army of lawyers who specialized in making problems disappear. They're claiming she was in the Hamptons when it happened, Ethan told Claire one evening, his frustration evident. They have credit card receipts, witnesses, the whole manufactured alibi. She probably paid someone to do it. Claire didn't look up from the painting. She was working on the woman's left eye, the most challenging part. Eyes were where personality lived. Get them wrong, and the whole face died. Probably, but we can't prove it. He moved to stand behind her, watching her work. How do you know where to put the highlights? I don't, I'm guessing. Claire's hand was cramping, but she kept going. Based on the other eye, the light source, the painter's technique. But it's educated guessing at best. It looks perfect. It's not. She finally set down her brush, flexing her aching fingers. It's my interpretation of what was there. My hand. My choices. The original artist is gone. I'm just trying to honor what they intended. That's all any of us can do. Ethan pulled up a chair beside her. Try to honor what came before, while making it our own. Claire looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in days. He had dark circles under his eyes that matched hers, new lines of stress around his mouth. The Victoria situation was taking its toll on him too. When's the gala? She asked. 3 weeks. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stick up. The Callaway Foundation's annual fundraiser. 500 of New York's wealthiest all in one room, pretending they care about art preservation while really just networking and showing off. Sounds horrible. It is. But it raises millions for the foundation, so I smile and make speeches and pretend I don't want to be literally anywhere else. He paused. Victoria will be there. Her father's on the foundation board. Claire's stomach tightened. Are you worried she'll cause a scene? I'm worried she'll corner you. His voice was hard. She knows about the gala, knows you'll be there presenting the restored painting to the board. It's the perfect opportunity for her to strike again. Then maybe I shouldn't go. Claire. Ethan turned her chair so she faced him. You've spent 2 months bringing that painting back to life. You deserve to present it, to show everyone what you can do. I won't let Victoria take that from you too. You can't control her. No, but I can make sure she regrets ever threatening you. Something dangerous flickered in his expression. I've been building a case against her. Not just the painting, everything. The insurance fraud with your father, the harassment. Her father's company has been cutting corners on safety regulations. I've had investigators digging into it. When I'm done, Victoria won't just lose me. She'll lose everything. Claire should have been pleased. Victoria deserved consequences for what she'd done. But something about Ethan's cold fury worried her. Don't become like her, she said quietly. Don't let revenge turn you into something you're not. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her hand, his thumb brushing over the paint stains that had become permanent. You're right. I'm sorry. When I think about what she tried to do to you, to your father, to this painting. I know. But we win by being better, not by being worse. Claire squeezed his hand. The painting survives. My father's healthy. We're okay. Let that be enough. When did you become so wise? Probably around the same time I learned how to mix burnt sienna and titanium white to recreate 17th century skin tones. She managed a tired smile. You pick things up. Emma started visiting more frequently as the gala approached. She'd sit quietly, well, as quietly as a 6-year-old could, watching Claire work and asking questions that were sometimes profound and sometimes completely absurd. Why is the paint wet if the painting is old? She asked one afternoon. Because I'm adding new paint to fix the damaged parts, Claire explained. But won't the new paint get old too? Eventually, yes. So someone will have to fix your fix? Claire paused. She'd never thought about it that way. Maybe. Probably. That's how restoration works. Each generation tries to preserve what the last one left behind. Like family, Emma said seriously. Exactly like family. Emma climbed down from her stool and stood very close to the painting, her nose almost touching the canvas. She looks like you now. I promise I didn't use myself as a model. Not your face. Your eyes. Emma pointed. She has the same look you get when Daddy makes you smile, but you're trying not to. Claire's heart did something complicated. When does that happen? All the time. Emma said it matter-of-factly, like it was obvious to everyone. He makes you laugh and you get all embarrassed. It's cute. Does your dad know you're this observant? Probably not. Adults never think kids notice things. Emma moved to the window, pressing her hands against the glass. Are you going to marry my daddy? The question caught Claire completely off guard. Emma, because I think you should. Then you could live with us and fix paintings, and we could get the dog. Emma turned back, her small face very serious. I know you're not my mom. My mom didn't want to be my mom, but you could be something else, something better. Claire's throat was too tight to speak. She crossed to Emma and knelt down to her level. I care about you very much, and your dad. But marriage is complicated. It's not something people do just because it makes sense. Why not? You like each other. I like you. You could teach me Italian and fix paintings, and Daddy could stop being sad all the time. Emma's logic was 6-year-old simple and devastatingly accurate. What else matters? A lot of things matter. Timing and trust and making sure everyone's ready. Are you ready? I don't know yet. Claire tucked a curl behind Emma's ear. But I promise when I figure it out, you'll be the first to know. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. She went back to her coloring book, leaving Claire kneeling on the floor, trying to process what a 6-year-old had just made her realize. She was falling in love with Ethan Calloway. had probably been falling since the moment he bought a restaurant rather than let her get fired. But acknowledging it felt dangerous. Love meant vulnerability, meant trusting someone with the power to destroy you. And Claire had spent so long protecting herself that the idea of lowering her defenses terrified her. The painting was finished 2 days before the gala. Claire stepped back, exhausted and paint-stained, and looked at what she'd created. The woman's face had been reconstructed with as much accuracy as research and skill could achieve. Her expression was there. That moment of determined bravery, of choosing the difficult right over the easy wrong. The damage was still visible if you looked closely, the repair work evident in the way the paint sat differently on the canvas. But the woman herself had survived. Ethan stood beside her, seeing it for the first time since Claire had banned him from the studio during the final week. "It's extraordinary," he said quietly. "It's not the original." "No, it's better." He pointed to the repaired section. "You can see what she survived now. Before she was just beautiful. Now she's beautiful and strong. There's a difference." Claire's eyes were burning with tears she refused to let fall. "Your grandmother would have hated it." "My grandmother would have recognized herself in it." Ethan's voice was rough. "That's what my mother didn't tell you. The woman in this painting, family legend says she was the artist's patron who left her husband to be with him. Lost her title, her money, everything. But she got to live honestly for the first time in her life. My grandmother saw that as the ultimate victory." "You never told me that story." "Because I wanted you to restore her without bias, without trying to recreate some romantic myth." He turned to Claire. "You brought her back based on what you saw, what you felt. That's more honest than anything I could have told you." They stood there in the quiet studio, the city humming 40 floors below, looking at a painting that had survived 3 centuries of damage and 1 act of deliberate violence. It wasn't perfect, but it was whole. "The gala's Friday," Ethan said. "You'll need a dress." "I have a dress." "You need a dress that makes Victoria choke on her champagne." He smiled. "Let me handle it, please. This is my world, and I want you to walk into it looking like you own it." "I don't know, Claire." He turned to face her fully. "For 8 weeks you've poured everything into saving this painting. Let me do something for you. Let me give you armor for facing the people who think you don't belong." She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle it herself. But the truth was, she was terrified of the gala, of being surrounded by people like Victoria who saw her as an interloper, a gold digger, someone to be destroyed. "Okay," she said quietly, "but nothing too flashy. I need to be able to move." "I'll tell the stylist. Elegant armor, not a cage." His smile softened. "Thank you for trusting me." The dress arrived the next day. It was the color of old gold, the kind you saw in Renaissance paintings, with clean lines that made Claire look taller, stronger. The stylist had sent shoes that didn't hurt and a clutch that could fit her phone and emergency art supplies. Claire tried it on in her apartment, staring at herself in the mirror. She looked like someone who belonged in Ethan's world, someone who could stand in a ballroom full of Manhattan's elite and not flinch. It scared her how much she wanted that to be true. Friday arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of early spring evening where the city almost convinced itself winter was over. Claire spent the afternoon at the studio, making final adjustments to the painting's presentation frame, checking and rechecking that every detail was perfect. Eleanor appeared at 4, dressed in midnight blue and diamonds that probably required their own security detail. "You look terrified," she observed. "I am terrified." "Good, it means you care." Eleanor circled the painting slowly. "My mother would have approved, not of the restoration, she was too much of a purist for that, but of you, of your courage to try anyway." "I didn't have much choice. The painting was destroyed." "You had every choice. You could have declared it unsalvageable, taken your salary, moved on." Eleanor's eyes met hers. "Instead, you spent 2 months essentially recreating someone else's masterpiece with perfect enough accuracy that most people won't even notice the repair. That's not just skill. That's devotion." "It felt wrong to let Victoria win. And that, my dear, is why I changed my mind about you." Eleanor's smile was slight. "Victoria fights with money and influence. You fight with work and integrity. I know which one I'd bet on." She left Claire with another envelope, this one containing a check that made Claire's eyes water, and a note that read, For your father's continued care, consider it payment for giving my mother's favorite painting a second life. E.C. Claire was still staring at it when Ethan arrived to pick her up. He stopped in the doorway, just looking at her. "You're staring," she said nervously. "I know." He didn't apologize. "You look... If you say beautiful, I'm changing back into my work clothes." I was going to say formidable. He crossed to her, offered his arm. "Ready to face the wolves?" "No, but let's do it anyway." The gala was held at the plaza, because of course it was. The ballroom glittered with crystal and flowers and people who wore their wealth like uniforms. Claire walked in on Ethan's arm, very aware of the heads turning, the whispers starting. "Ignore them," Ethan murmured. "They're just surprised I brought someone interesting instead of decorative." Victoria was decorative? Victoria was a placeholder. You're real. He guided her through the crowd, introducing her to board members and donors and people whose names Claire immediately forgot. Everyone was polite, but she could see the calculation in their eyes. Who was she? What did she want? How long before Ethan got bored? Victoria arrived fashionably late, wearing red like a declaration of war. She swept through the crowd with her father, a silver-haired man who radiated the kind of power that came from crushing competitors. Her eyes locked on Claire immediately, and her smile was pure poison. "Ethan, darling." She air-kissed him like they were still together. "And this must be your little restoration project. How quaint." "Victoria." Ethan's voice was ice. "You're not welcome at my table." "Actually, Daddy insisted we sit together. Board unity and all that." Her smile widened. "I hope you don't mind sharing the spotlight with someone who actually belongs here." Claire felt Ethan tense beside her, ready to eviscerate Victoria in front of everyone. She put a hand on his arm, stopping him. "I don't mind at all," Claire said calmly. "After all, I'm here to present my work. You're here to watch me do it." Victoria's eyes flashed. "We'll see about that." Dinner was excruciating. Victoria spent the entire meal making pointed comments about people who climbed social ladders, about the importance of proper breeding, about how some people just didn't understand the difference between being invited and belonging. Her father watched with amusement, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Claire said nothing, just ate her overpriced food and waited for her moment. That moment came after dessert, when Ethan stood to give his speech about the foundation's work. He spoke well, practiced and polished, hitting all the right notes about preservation and legacy. Then he introduced Claire. "This year's featured restoration is particularly meaningful to my family," he said. "A 17th century portrait that's been passed down through generations, surviving everything history could throw at it. When it was damaged beyond what we thought repairable, Claire Bennett took on the impossible task of bringing it back to life." Claire stood, her legs shaking, and walked to the podium. 500 faces stared at her. Victoria's was a mask of rage barely contained. "I'm not going to pretend this was easy," Claire began, abandoning the speech she'd prepared, "or that the restoration is perfect. You can still see the damage if you look closely, the slash across the woman's face, the places where new paint sits on old canvas. But I realized something during this process. Scars aren't failures. They're proof of survival." She clicked to the next slide, showing the painting before restoration, the woman's face obliterated by violence. Someone tried to erase this woman, tried to destroy her story because they were angry about something that had nothing to do with her. Claire's voice was steady now. "But she survived. Not unchanged, survival always changes us, but she survived with her essential self intact." The next slide showed the finished restoration. A collective intake of breath rippled through the ballroom. This is who she is now, scarred but whole, damaged but strong, still telling her story despite someone's best efforts to silence her. Claire looked directly at Victoria. That's what preservation really means, not erasing the hard parts, honoring them. The applause was thunderous. People stood, their faces showing genuine emotion instead of polite interest. Eleanor was crying quietly, her hand pressed to her mouth, and Ethan was looking at Claire like she'd just performed a miracle. But Claire was watching Victoria, who had gone very pale. "That painting was beyond saving," Victoria hissed loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "She probably just painted over it and called it restoration. Anyone could do that." "Actually, they couldn't." The voice came from the back of the room. A small woman in academic robes made her way forward. Dr. Sarah Chen, NYU Art Conservation Department. I've examined Ms. Bennett's work personally. The technique, the pigment matching, the understanding of period-appropriate materials, it's graduate-level skill applied with extraordinary precision. I don't care about your credentials, Victoria snapped. This is a fraud. She's a fraud. She was a waitress 3 months ago, and now suddenly she's an expert? Ethan probably paid you to say that. Victoria, her father's voice was sharp. That's enough. It's not enough. Victoria was standing now, her voice climbing. She doesn't belong here. She's using him, using all of you. She's a nobody who got lucky, and she's the woman I love. Ethan's voice cut through Victoria's tirade like a blade. The room went silent. What? Victoria's face crumpled. I'm in love with her. Ethan moved to stand beside Claire, taking her hand. I have been for months. And unlike you, Victoria, she never asked me for anything, never demanded I change who I was or pretended to be something she wasn't. She just showed up every day and did the work. You can't... Victoria was shaking now. After everything I did for you. Everything you did? Ethan's voice was deadly quiet. Let's talk about what you did. You tried to kill Claire's father by freezing his insurance. You destroyed a priceless family painting. You've been harassing her for months, threatening her, trying to ruin her life because I chose her over you. You can't prove any of that. Actually, we can. Ethan pulled out his phone, tapped something. The ballroom screens lit up with images, text messages, security footage, financial records. My lawyers have been building this case for weeks. Insurance fraud, destruction of property, harassment, criminal threatening, all tied directly back to you. Victoria's father was on his feet now. Ethan, I'm sure we can discuss this privately. No. Ethan's voice was iron. Your daughter tried to destroy someone I care about. Used your family's resources to commit multiple felonies. I've already turned this evidence over to the district attorney, but I wanted everyone here to know exactly who Victoria Hale is before they write their next foundation check or invite her to their next gala. The room erupted. People were shouting, cameras flashing as society reporters smelled blood. Victoria was screaming something about lawyers and slander, but security was already moving toward her. Claire stood frozen in the chaos, still processing what Ethan had said. He loved her. He'd said it in front of 500 people, destroyed his ex-girlfriend's reputation, blown up the entire gala, because he loved her. Ethan! She tugged his hand. Ethan, we need to talk. He let her pull him away from the crowd into a side hallway where the noise was muffled by heavy doors. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might escape her chest. You just told 500 people you love me, she said. I did. He didn't look sorry. Was that wrong? It was insane. You destroyed Victoria in front of everyone, made yourself look like someone who protects the people he cares about? Ethan's eyes were intense. I don't regret it, Claire. Not one word. She tried to hurt you, and I won't tolerate that. But now everyone knows. Everyone will expect... Claire stopped, realized what she was really afraid of. What if I can't be what you need? What if I'm just a waitress who got lucky and I disappoint you? Then you'd still be the woman who spent 8 weeks reconstructing a painting that everyone else declared hopeless. Ethan cupped her face gently. You'd still be the person who gave up everything for her father, who speaks honestly when everyone else lies, who makes my daughter laugh and my mother cry and me remember what it feels like to want something more than success. Ethan, I love you, Claire Bennett. I've loved you since you spoke Italian to my mother and didn't apologize. I'll love you if you never restore another painting. I'll love you if you decide tomorrow that you hate me. I'll love you if... She kissed him. It was clumsy and desperate and tasted like champagne and fear and hope all mixed together. Ethan pulled her closer, one hand in her hair, the other at her waist, and Claire forgot about the gala and Victoria and 500 witnesses. There was only this moment of choosing bravery over safety, of admitting she wanted something impossible and reaching for it anyway. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Claire rested her forehead against his. I love you too, she whispered. I'm terrified, and I have no idea how to do this, but I love you too. Ethan's smile was brighter than the ballroom chandeliers. Then we'll figure it out together. They stayed in that hallway for a long time, holding each other while the gala continued without them. While Victoria was escorted out by security, While the scandal that would dominate society pages for months was born, eventually Eleanor found them. The painting's been moved to the main gallery. People want to see it up close. And Emma's asking where you went, something about making sure you didn't leave without saying goodbye. Claire straightened her dress, tried to fix her hair. Eleanor just smiled. You look exactly how you should look, she said, like someone who just chose happiness over fear. Now come. Your audience awaits. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Claire answered questions about the restoration, accepted congratulations, watched as people examined the painting with new appreciation. Ethan stayed at her side, his hand never leaving the small of her back, a quiet claim that made Claire's heart race every time she noticed it. Emma appeared near midnight, carried by her nanny, but fighting sleep. Did you kiss? She asked Claire directly. Emma! Ethan looked mortified. It's okay to kiss, Emma insisted. That's what people do when they love each other. Miss Rodriguez told us in school. Your teacher talks about kissing? Ethan sounded concerned. Only prince and princess kissing, not real kissing. Emma reached for Claire, who took her automatically. You're a princess now because Daddy's a prince, and you kissed. I think your fairy tales are getting mixed up with real life, Claire said gently. Real life is better than fairy tales, Emma said, her eyes already closing. Fairy tales are boring. Nobody in fairy tales fixes paintings or speaks Italian or makes Daddy laugh. She fell asleep in Claire's arms, her small body going limp with the absolute trust of childhood. Claire looked down at her, this little girl who'd decided Claire was worth loving, and felt something shift in her chest. This was what she'd been afraid of. This completeness. This feeling that she'd found something she didn't know she was looking for. It was terrifying and wonderful and absolutely nothing like she'd imagined. I should get her home, Ethan said softly, but I don't want this night to end. Then don't let it. Claire shifted Emma to one arm, took Ethan's hand with the other. Come on, let's go home. They left the gala together. Ethan, Claire, Emma, and Eleanor, who insisted on coming along because someone needed to make sure the scandal was properly managed. The painting would be delivered to Ethan's penthouse in the morning, but tonight it stayed at the plaza, watched over by security and admired by people who finally understood what restoration really meant. In the car, Claire looked out at Manhattan streaming past, the city that had taken everything from her, and then given it all back in ways she'd never expected. Emma slept on her lap, Ethan's hand warm in hers, Eleanor giving instructions to the driver about avoiding paparazzi. This is insane, Claire said to no one in particular. Welcome to the family, Eleanor replied dryly. Insanity is our baseline. It only gets worse from here. But she was smiling when she said it. And Claire, despite everything, the scandal, the uncertainty, the 500 witnesses to her very public romance, found herself smiling back. She'd spent so long being invisible, being safe, being small enough to avoid damage. But tonight she'd stood in front of Manhattan's elite and talked about survival, about bearing scars with pride, about refusing to let anyone erase your story. And somewhere in the middle of it all, she'd stopped hiding. The woman in the painting would have approved. The scandal broke on every society blog by morning. Photos of Victoria being escorted out of the plaza, screenshots of the evidence Ethan had displayed, speculation about the waitress turned restorer who'd somehow captured Manhattan's most eligible billionaire. Claire's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. and didn't stop. She ignored it, focusing instead on the painting that had been delivered to Ethan's penthouse at dawn. It hung now in his private study, the morning light catching the repaired section in a way that made the restoration nearly invisible. Nearly, but not quite. If you knew where to look, you could still see where violence had tried to erase beauty and failed. Coffee. Ethan appeared beside her, holding 2 mugs. He looked exhausted. They'd only gotten 3 hours of sleep, but also lighter somehow, like exposing Victoria's crimes had lifted a weight he'd been carrying for months. The press is calling me a homewrecker, Claire said, still staring at the painting. Never mind that you and Victoria were barely together. Never mind that she literally committed multiple felonies. I'm the villain because I'm not rich. Do you care what they think? Claire considered this. A month ago, she would have cared desperately, would have hidden, apologized, tried to make herself smaller to avoid the attention. But standing here in Ethan's study, looking at a painting she'd brought back from destruction, she found she didn't have the energy for shame anymore. No, she said, surprised by how true it was. I don't. Good. Ethan set down his coffee and pulled out his phone. Because I'm about to make it worse. He showed her the screen, a press release from Callaway Industries announcing the formation of a new foundation dedicated to art restoration and preservation, with Claire Bennett named as director. Ethan, I can't run a foundation. I barely finished my degree. You'll have a staff, funding, access to damaged pieces from museums and private collections all over the world. His eyes were bright with excitement. You could do what you did with this painting 100 times over. Train other restorers, save pieces that everyone else has given up on. This is insane. Probably. He didn't look concerned. But you're the one who taught me that the best things survive because someone refused to give up on them. I'm not giving up on you, Claire, or your gift for bringing broken things back to life. Before Claire could respond, Emma burst into the study, still in her pajamas, followed by a harried-looking nanny. I'm sorry, Mr. Callaway, she got away from me. It's fine, Marie. Ethan scooped Emma up. What's the emergency? The painting is back. Emma squirmed until he set her down, then ran to stand in front of it. The lady's face is fixed. Claire fixed her. I did. Claire knelt beside Emma. What do you think? I think she looks brave. Emma traced the air in front of the woman's reconstructed face, careful not to touch. Like she did something scary, but she's not sorry. That's exactly right. Claire felt her throat tighten. How did you know that? Because you look the same way. Emma turned to her with 6-year-old seriousness. When people say mean things about you on Daddy's computer and you don't cry, you just look brave and not sorry. Ethan made a strangled sound. You've been reading tabloid coverage? Only the parts without bad words. Emma looked unrepentant. Miss Rodriguez says knowing what people say about you is important so you can decide if they're right. Your teacher is either very wise or very concerning, Claire said. I can't decide which. The doorbell rang, followed by Eleanor's voice echoing through the penthouse. Ethan, are you decent? I brought lawyers and breakfast, not necessarily in that order. What followed was 3 hours of legal strategy that made Claire's head spin. Ethan's legal team laid out their case against Victoria, the insurance fraud, the destruction of property, the harassment. They had recordings, financial trails, testimony from witnesses. Victoria's lawyers were already trying to negotiate a settlement, offering money to make it all go away. No settlement, Ethan said flatly. I want charges filed. All of them. Ethan. Claire touched his arm. Can I talk to you, privately? They stepped out onto the terrace. Manhattan spread below them like a promise or a threat depending on your perspective. The morning was cold enough that Claire could see her breath. What Victoria did was horrible, Claire said carefully, but destroying her won't undo it. It won't bring back the original painting or erase the threats or make her a better person. So we just let her get away with it? No. We let the justice system handle it. File the charges, present the evidence, let a jury decide. Claire took his hand. But you need to let go of the rage because it's eating you up and I can't watch that happen. Ethan was quiet for a long time, his jaw tight. She tried to kill your father. I know, and she'll face consequences for that. But those consequences can't be about revenge. They have to be about justice. There's a difference. When did you become so mature? Probably around the time I realized that holding on to anger was just another way of staying broken. Claire moved closer, her voice dropping. I spent a year being angry, at the universe for making my father sick, at myself for not being able to fix it faster, at everyone who had money and health and easy lives. And it didn't change anything except make me miserable. So you just stopped being angry? No. I'm still angry sometimes, but I don't let it make my decisions anymore. She looked back through the glass doors where Eleanor was arguing with one of the lawyers. Let the courts handle Victoria. You focus on building something better instead of tearing her down. Ethan pulled her into his arms, his face buried in her hair. How are you real? I ask myself the same thing about you. They stood there for a while, holding each other while the city woke up below, until Eleanor knocked on the glass and gestured impatiently for them to come back inside. The legal team left with instructions to proceed with criminal charges, but no media circus. Eleanor stayed, reorganizing Ethan's entire schedule with the efficiency of someone who'd been managing his life since birth. The foundation announcement goes out tomorrow, she said, typing rapidly on her phone. I've already had 3 museum directors call asking about collaboration opportunities. Apparently restoring impossible paintings is good publicity. It's not about publicity, Claire protested. Everything is about publicity, dear. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be. Eleanor looked up from her phone. Now, about your father. Has anyone checked on him this morning? Claire's stomach dropped. In all the chaos, she'd forgotten to call. She grabbed her phone, dialed his number, her heart racing until he picked up on the 3rd ring. I'm fine, kiddo, Thomas said before she could ask. Saw the news coverage. You caused quite a stir. Are you okay? With all this attention? Are you kidding? I've got neighbors bringing me casseroles and asking for autographs. Apparently having a famous daughter is better than cable TV. His voice softened. I'm proud of you, Claire. Your mother would be too. Claire's eyes burned. I just restored a painting, Dad. It's not that big a deal. You did more than that. You stood up in front of people who thought you didn't belong and proved them wrong. That's everything. After she hung up, Claire found Ethan watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. I want you to meet my daughter. He said it seriously, like they hadn't spent the last several weeks with Emma already. Not as my employee or my friend, as the woman I'm in love with, as someone who might be part of our lives permanently. Ethan, she already knows. She knows I care about you. She doesn't know I'm planning to ask you to marry me. The world tilted sideways. What? Not now. He held up his hands. Not today or even this month, but eventually, when you're ready, when we've figured out how this works. He moved closer. But I need you to understand, this isn't casual for me. I'm not testing the waters or seeing where it goes. I want everything, Claire. You, Emma, your father, a life where we're actually happy instead of just successful. Claire couldn't breathe. That's a lot of pressure. I know. And if it's too much, tell me now. I'll back off. We can just date like normal people. Take it slow. Normal people don't announce their love in front of 500 witnesses. Fair point. He smiled ruefully. So what do you want? What did she want? A month ago, Claire would have said she wanted her father healthy and her bills paid and maybe, if she was lucky, a job that didn't destroy her body and soul. Now she had all that and more, and the possibilities were terrifying. But Emma's words echoed in her head. Real life is better than fairy tales. I want to try, Claire said finally. I want to see what happens when I stop protecting myself from good things. I want to be part of your life and Emma's life and figure out if this impossible thing we're doing can actually work. And marriage? Ask me when the foundation is running and Victoria's in jail, and I've had time to process the fact that my life completely changed in 3 months. She smiled, but ask me knowing the answer will probably be yes. Ethan kissed her then, soft and sure, like they had all the time in the world instead of Eleanor clearing her throat impatiently from the doorway. If you two are done being disgustingly romantic, Emma's teacher called. Apparently our darling child told her entire class that her father destroyed a bad lady at a fancy party, and now Claire's a princess. She said that? Ethan looked torn between mortification and amusement. She drew pictures. They're very detailed. Eleanor held up her phone, showing a child's drawing of a ballroom with stick figures and what appeared to be a dragon labeled Victoria ship. Sick. Claire burst out laughing. She couldn't help it. The whole situation was absurd. The scandal, the foundation, the billionaire declaring love, the 6-year-old's artistic interpretation of society drama. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was a princess in a child's drawing and the director of a foundation and someone's future wife. I have no idea what I'm doing, she said when she could breathe again. None of us do, Eleanor replied. We just pretend very convincingly. The next few weeks were chaos of a different kind. The foundation announcement generated exactly the media storm Eleanor had predicted. Claire gave interviews, met with museum directors, started assembling a team of restorers who shared her philosophy about preservation over perfection. Her father's apartment became a regular gathering place for the most unlikely family dinners. Eleanor arguing with Thomas about politics, Emma teaching Claire's father to play elaborate make-believe games, Ethan trying to cook and failing spectacularly. You're burning the pasta, Claire observed one evening, rescuing the pot before the smoke alarm could trigger. How do you burn pasta? It's literally just boiling water. You have to actually put water in the pot, darling, Eleanor said from where she was helping Emma with homework. Not just stare at the stove hoping it cooks through force of will. I run a multi-billion-dollar company. I should be able to boil pasta. Different skill sets, Thomas said diplomatically. I once tried to fix Claire's car and ended up making it worse. We all have our talents. Mine is apparently destroying kitchens. Ethan surveyed the damage. Should we order in? Again? Emma looked up from her math worksheet. We ordered in yesterday and the day before. Real families cook. We are a real family, Claire said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. We just happen to be terrible at cooking. Emma considered this. Can we be a real family that gets pizza? They got pizza. It became a Thursday tradition. Imperfect family dinners where nobody cooked and everyone talked over each other, and Emma got sauce on her homework and Eleanor complained about the quality of delivery food while eating 3 slices. It was messy and chaotic and nothing like the elegant dinners Claire had served at Luminaire. It was perfect. Victoria's trial was set for August. Her lawyers tried everything, claiming mental distress, blaming her father's influence, suggesting the evidence was fabricated. But the paper trail was too clear, the testimony too consistent. The district attorney was pushing for the maximum sentence on all charges. She wants to make a deal, Ethan's lawyer reported one afternoon in June. Full confession, testimony against her father's company for the insurance fraud, restitution for damages. In exchange, reduced charges and possible probation instead of prison time. Claire looked at Ethan. They were in his office, the city spread below them, the painting visible through the open door to the study. 3 months since the gala, and she still sometimes couldn't believe this was her life. What do you think? Ethan asked her. I think prison won't fix what's broken in her. Claire chose her words carefully. But accountability might. If she confesses, if she faces real consequences, if she has to rebuild her life from the ground up, maybe she learns something. Or maybe she just gets better at hiding her cruelty. Maybe. But that's not our problem to solve. Claire took his hand. We got justice. The painting survived. My father's healthy. We're happy. Isn't that enough? Ethan was quiet for a long time, then he called his lawyer back. Accept the deal, but I want the confession public. I want everyone who thought Claire was the problem to know exactly who was really trying to destroy what we built. The confession made headlines. Victoria admitted everything. The insurance fraud, hiring someone to vandalize the painting, months of harassment and threats. Her father resigned from every board he sat on. Their family's reputation, built over generations, crumbled in days. Claire should have felt victorious. Instead, she just felt tired. Is it wrong that I feel sorry for her? She asked her father one evening. They were sitting in his garden courtyard, watching the summer light fade. No, kiddo. It means you're human. Thomas was doing better every day. His color good, his strength returning. People like Victoria, they're not born cruel. Something makes them that way. Usually fear or pain they don't know how to process. That doesn't excuse what she did. No. But understanding doesn't require forgiveness. You can acknowledge someone's pain without letting them hurt you with it. He patted her hand. You're building something good with Ethan and Emma. Don't let Victoria's brokenness contaminate that. The foundation opened its doors in September, occupying an entire floor of a building Ethan owned in Chelsea. Claire hired 6 restorers, all of them brilliant and slightly odd in the way that people who spent their days obsessing over centuries-old paint tended to be. They took on projects other conservators had declared hopeless. A water-damaged Vermeer sketch, a fire-scarred Renaissance altarpiece, a collection of photographs from the Civil War that were deteriorating so fast you could watch them fade. Emma started first grade and announced she wanted to be a restorer when she grew up. Or a princess. Or both. Can you be both? In this family, you can be anything, Ethan told her. Eleanor threw herself into fundraising, organizing galas and auctions that raised millions for preservation work. She and Thomas became unlikely friends, bonding over their shared love of arguing and their mutual determination to see Claire happy. Your father threatened me, Eleanor reported one afternoon with obvious delight. Said if we hurt you, he'd find a way to make us regret it despite having no money or influence. What did you say? I told him I'd help him hide the bodies. Eleanor's smile was sharp. I like him. He raised you right. By October, the painting hung in the foundation's main gallery. the centerpiece of an exhibition on restoration ethics. Visitors came from around the world to see it, not just the artistry of the original painter, but the story of its survival. Claire had insisted on displaying the before photos alongside the finished work, showing the damage, the repair process, the choice to preserve scars rather than erase them. "It's controversial," one of her restorers said. "Purists are saying you violated conservation principles." "Good," Claire replied. "Let them argue. That's how the field evolves." The exhibition's opening was nothing like the Callaway Foundation Gala. Smaller, quieter, filled with people who actually cared about the work, instead of the social currency. Claire gave a short speech about the difference between restoration and resurrection, about honoring history while acknowledging damage. "We're taught to make things look untouched," she said, standing in front of the painting, "to erase evidence of time and trauma. But I think there's another way. We can acknowledge what these pieces survived and celebrate that they're still here to tell their stories. Scars aren't failures. They're proof that something was worth saving." The applause was genuine, not performative. Afterwards, people lined up to talk to her. Not about Ethan or the scandal or her unlikely rise from waitress to director, but about technique and philosophy and the dozens of damaged pieces waiting for someone to believe they could be saved. This, Claire thought, was what belonging felt like. Not wealth or status or being on the right guest lists, just doing work that mattered with people who understood why it mattered. She found Ethan later standing in front of the painting with Emma sleeping against his shoulder. "She insisted on coming," he said quietly. "Said she needed to see the lady one more time before bedtime." Claire studied the painted woman's face, that expression of determined courage she'd reconstructed from photographs and guesswork and hope. "Do you ever wonder what choice she made? The one your grandmother talked about? Every day?" Ethan shifted Emma's weight, but I think maybe the choice isn't what matters. It's that she made it, that she decided something was worth the risk and went for it anyway. "Is that what we're doing?" "I think so," he smiled. "High risk, potentially high reward, definitely terrifying." "Sounds about right." Claire leaned against him, careful not to wake Emma. "For what it's worth, I'd make the same choice again, speaking Italian to your mother, taking the job, all of it. Even the part where my psychotic ex-girlfriend tried to destroy your life. Especially that part. It forced me to stop hiding." She looked up at him. "I spent so long being invisible, being safe. It took someone trying to erase me to realize I'd already been erasing myself." They stood there in the quiet gallery, the three of them, while outside the city hummed with its usual chaos. In a few hours, critics would write reviews of the exhibition. In a few days, more damaged pieces would arrive at the foundation. In a few months, Emma would turn 7 and demand the promised dog and probably a pony to go with it. But right now, this moment, everything was exactly where it needed to be. Emma stirred, opened her eyes, saw the painting. "She's smiling," she murmured sleepily. "The woman in the painting?" Claire looked closer. "I don't think—" "Not smiling with her mouth, smiling with her eyes," Emma yawned. "Like she knows a secret." Claire studied the woman's face, the expression she'd spent weeks reconstructing. Emma was right. There was something in those eyes, knowledge, maybe, or satisfaction, the look of someone who'd made an impossible choice and survived it. "What secret do you think she knows?" Claire asked. "That being brave is scary, but being scared forever is scarier." Emma said it with the simple wisdom of childhood, then promptly fell back asleep. Ethan and Claire looked at each other over Emma's head. "She's smarter than both of us," Ethan said. "Most 7-year-olds are." Claire touched the frame gently, a benediction or a goodbye. "We should get her home." They left the gallery together, the painting watching them go with her reconstructed eyes and her secret smile. Behind them, the exhibition would run for 6 months, drawing thousands of visitors who'd leave with new understanding of what it meant to preserve history while acknowledging damage. But Claire's favorite response came 2 weeks later, in a letter from a young woman in Detroit. "I saw your exhibition online. I'm a second-year conservation student, and I was ready to quit because I ruined a piece I was working on. Made a mistake that I thought couldn't be fixed. But seeing your painting, seeing how you saved it even after someone tried to destroy it, made me realize that mistakes don't have to be endings. They can be new beginnings if you're brave enough to try. Thank you for showing me that scars can be part of the story instead of something to hide." Claire pinned the letter to her office wall, where she could see it every day. A reminder that the work mattered not just for the pieces they saved, but for the people who saw those pieces and learned that survival was possible. In November, Ethan proposed. Not at a fancy restaurant or a tropical beach or anywhere Instagram-worthy. He did it on a Thursday evening in Claire's studio, while she was covered in paint and cursing at a particularly stubborn varnish layer. "Claire," he said, and something in his voice made her turn around. He was on one knee, holding a ring that looked suspiciously old. "That's Eleanor's," Claire said, recognizing the setting from a portrait in Ethan's study. "It was my grandmother Catherine's. My mother insisted." He smiled. "Said Catherine would have liked you, would have appreciated someone who understood that the cracks are part of the beauty." "Ethan, I know we've only been together 8 months. I know you're still figuring out who you are outside of survival mode. I know this is fast and crazy and probably a terrible idea by any reasonable standard." He took a breath. "But I don't want reasonable. I want you. I want Thursday pizza dinners and arguing about conservation ethics and watching Emma try to teach you how to play Minecraft. I want all of it, messy and imperfect and real." Claire's hands were shaking. "I'm going to get paint on the ring. I don't care. Your mother will kill me if I ruin a family heirloom. She's fine with it. I asked." He was grinning now. "Claire Bennett, will you marry me?" She thought about the woman in the painting, making her impossible choice. She thought about her father, fighting his way back to health. She thought about Emma, drawing pictures of princesses who restored paintings. She thought about herself 3 months ago, invisible and terrified, and convinced that wanting more was dangerous. "Yes," she said, "but I'm not changing my name. And we're getting the dog Emma wants. And I need you to understand that I'll probably always be a little broken from this year. I don't want you unbroken. I want you exactly as you are." Ethan slipped the ring onto her paint-stained finger. It fit perfectly. Scars and all. They got married in May, exactly 1 year after Claire had spoken Italian in a restaurant and accidentally changed her entire life. Not a big wedding. Eleanor had pushed for a massive society event, but Claire had held firm. Just family and close friends, in the foundation's gallery, surrounded by paintings they'd saved. Emma was the flower girl and took her job with absolute seriousness, critiquing the floral arrangements and insisting the aisle runner be the exact shade of Renaissance gold. Thomas walked Claire down the aisle, his steps steady, his eyes wet. Eleanor cried through the entire ceremony, despite claiming she never cried at weddings. The vows were simple. Ethan promised to always be honest, even when the truth was uncomfortable. Claire promised to stop protecting herself from happiness. They both promised to show Emma that love didn't have to be perfect to be real. "You may now kiss the bride," the officiant said. "Finally," Emma Stage whispered. "I've been waiting forever." The reception was held in Thomas's garden courtyard, strung with lights and filled with the kind of chaotic joy that came from mixing art conservators with shipping executives with a 6-year-old who'd convinced everyone to play her made-up games. The food was catered. Nobody trusted Ethan near a kitchen, and the music was too loud and someone spilled wine on Claire's dress, and it was absolutely nothing like a society wedding should be. It was perfect. Late in the evening, Claire found herself standing alone for a moment, watching her new family celebrate. Her father was teaching Emma an old Italian folk dance, both of them laughing when they messed up the steps. Eleanor was engaged in what looked like a heated debate with Claire's head conservator about the ethics of digital restoration. Ethan was being cornered by his business partners, but he kept glancing over at Claire like he needed to make sure she was still there. A year ago, Claire had been a waitress with no prospects and a dying father. She'd been invisible, afraid, convinced that wanting more than survival was greedy. Now she was someone's wife, someone's mother, or close enough. The director of a foundation doing work that mattered. Someone who'd learned that being broken didn't mean being worthless. That scars told stories worth preserving. That sometimes the bravest thing you could do was admit you wanted something impossible and reach for it anyway. The woman in the painting hung in the gallery upstairs, her reconstructed face watching over all of it. Claire had never found out her real story. Who she was, what choice she'd made, whether she'd ever regretted it. But it didn't matter anymore, because Claire had made her own choice, had decided that love was worth the risk of being hurt, that happiness was worth the terror of losing it, that being visible was worth the danger of being seen. and standing there in the garden, watching her accidentally acquired family celebrate the most improbable wedding of the season, Claire realized something. She wasn't broken anymore. Not fixed, exactly. She still had bad days, still woke up sometimes in a panic thinking it was all temporary, still struggled with accepting that she deserved good things. But she was whole. Scarred and imperfect, and absolutely, completely whole. There you are. Ethan appeared beside her, pressing a glass of champagne into her hand. Emma's asking when we're cutting the cake. Apparently waiting until after dinner is taking forever. She's 7. Everything takes forever. Claire leaned into him. Are you happy? Deliriously, he kissed her temple. You? Terrified and happy and still half convinced I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. If it is, we're having the same dream. He pulled her closer. Come on, let's go cut the cake before our daughter stages a coup. They walked back to the party together, hand in hand, while above them the painting watched with knowing eyes. The woman who'd made her own impossible choice centuries ago, who'd survived damage and restoration and the passage of time to still be here, still telling her story. Years later, when people asked Claire how she'd gone from struggling waitress to foundation director, from invisible to unmissable, from broken to whole, she'd think about that painting, about the choice to preserve scars instead of erasing them, about the courage it took to be seen, and she'd tell them the truth. That it started with speaking when she should have stayed silent, with refusing to apologize for knowing things, with a billionaire who saw her when everyone else looked through her, and a 6-year-old who decided Claire was worth loving, and a painting that taught her that survival didn't mean staying unchanged. It meant bearing witness to your own story and refusing to let anyone, including yourself, erase it. The painting still hangs in the Foundation's gallery. Visitors come from around the world to see it, to study the visible repair work, to understand that damage doesn't diminish value. Sometimes Claire stands in front of it, remembering the 8 weeks she spent reconstructing a stranger's face, trying to honor what came before while adding something new. The woman in the painting looks back with those knowing eyes, that small, secret smile. And Claire smiles too, because she finally understands the secret. Being brave isn't about fearlessness. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway. It's about choosing visibility over safety, honesty over comfort, love over protection. It's about making impossible choices and surviving them, scars and all. And that's a story worth preserving.